Yeah. I called the regular meeting of the Eugene School Board to order on Wednesday, May 4th, 2022 at 7:03 p.m. We have all board members present tonight. We have Alicia Hayes, Gordon Lafer, Laurel O'Rourke, Maya Rabasa, Kirti Hasha and Kaufman, Michelle Shue, and myself, Judy Newman. Please join me in the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now I will read the land acknowledgement. The Eugene School Board would like to acknowledge that our institution sits on the homelands of the Kalapuya people. In the treaties of 1851 and 1854 through 1855, and the subsequent forced removals of many Indian people from Western Oregon, some of the Kalapuya were moved to the Grand Ronde Reservation, and some were moved to the Selects Reservation. It's important to note that all of Lake County was an important trading and gathering area for camas and other resources. During the Restoration era, from 1977 to 1989, Lane County was designated as the service area of the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Indians, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, the Coco Indian Tribe, and the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Indians. Eugene School District 4J acknowledges that the descendants of original and service area inhabitants of this land are still here today. They are thriving members of our schools and our communities. Countless members of other tribes now also call our community and schools their home. We wish to thank those original stewards of this land. We, as fellow stewards of this land, wish to remember that we need to take good care of this land and take good care of all the members of our school district community. Thank you. Is this echoey to others? Seems. Great, okay. All right, the first thing on our agenda is to do an agenda review. We all received it. And do we have any comments, Gordon?
Thank you. I would like to add an item for action about standardized testing. That we're in the middle of pizza testing time. I can explain it if you want, but I don't, we kind of do different things about how much is explained at this point when we're just suggesting something that we want not to be agenda.
And you're suggesting that we move it as an item for action?
Yeah, so we do that, as you know, like extremely rarely when it's something that is super timely, and that's what I believe this is.
Do we have a second? Laurel. So Gordon's moved and Laurel seconded. And any discussion?
Is it okay to explain in brief, or I mean, I don't want to take up time, but if people don't
Well,
know what the heck is this?
Yeah, I think you better explain it.
Okay. So very briefly, you know, we're in the thick of testing, and I've received multiple reports from teachers saying they're being warned not to speak to parents if they have concerns about standardized testing, or not to. If parents say, "Do you think the standardized testing is good for my kid?" or not say anything if they have something critical to say. I'm not saying that's our policy at all. Maybe people said confusion, I don't know what, but I think we're at a point where we need to have something that makes clear that everybody's free to speak their mind about things like that, and parents have a right to get straight answers. So that's essentially what my motion will address.
And what date does standardized testing begin? This start. Any other discussion? Okay. Then let's vote on that motion to move it to an action item. All those in favor of moving that item to an action item tonight, raise your hand. Okay, we have Okay, it looks like this passes unanimously with seven votes yes and no votes no. Okay,
Thank you.
let me just write that down so I put it on the agenda. Okay, any other conversations? So with that addition to the agenda, the rest of the agenda stands without any disagreement. Okay, got it. Then I'm going to move to the introductions, Superintendent Vanderkar and your report.
And I have an introduction of guests today I'm very excited about. Good evening, Board Chair Newman and board members, and a special welcome to Michelle and Kirti. I'd like to start the evening out by celebrating our 4-day licensed staff. This week is National Teachers Week, and I want to show my appreciation for the efforts you've given this year to bringing most of our students back into brick and mortar. It hasn't been easy, but with every classroom I visit, I can see caring and learning happening, thanks to you. Before the next board meeting, a team is meeting with 3 vendors to select a low barrier option for reporting harassment. I hope to report out more when we meet next. Yesterday, I was invited to attend the Public Higher Education and Oregon study at the University of Oregon. The task force is working to find ways where the U of O can tailor classes and programs to support the business needs of our county. We were joined by reps from Oregon State University, the Corvallis Superintendent, business owners from Corvallis, and similar representation from the Eugene Springfield area. At the meeting, we discussed how we need to change how we prepare students for careers that may or may not need 4-year college degrees. Members of the business community joined us to share the need to do this work together. On the other side of town, I joined a 4-day team at an ODE training on how to align 6 Oregon Department of Education initiatives into one brand. We discussed collecting information from stakeholders, ways to report, monitor, and evaluate. Initiatives we will need to collect data on and combine are high school success, student investment account, continuous improvement planning, career and technical education, early indicator and intervention systems, and everyday matters. This process does not bring in any extra funds. It organizes the 6 separate grants into one application. ODE is asking us to put existing funds from all of our ODE grant dollars into one report. It will take over a year to work through the process, and our biggest goal is to find out from stakeholders what is working and what is not, and plan to make adjustments once we gather information. Later in the evening yesterday, 2 of our very own student board reps, Yoseline and Taryn, were honored last night at the BPOD scholarship presentation. Both students were chosen to receive a scholarship of $4,000 per year for 4 years. Congratulations, Yoseline and Taryn. I believe one of them is online. So, in the crowd, we also have representatives from the Churchill swim team. The Lancer swimmers had a big season this year, including state championships and broken records. I'd like to invite Coach Megan Murphy to join me at the front of the room. She is to be commended for her leadership, dedication, absolute belief in, and support for her students. As a former coach, I can only imagine how proud she is of these.
You do. They can come up too, so parents are here, we can take pictures.
Come up front.
Let's just have, I'm gonna have actually all of them come up. The swimmers.
This is a good vantage point for a camera or phone for pictures.
Okay, so we did have a really big year. This was the first year that the girls have had a state championship in Churchill's history. And the boys, like following in the boys' footsteps 2 years ago, which was the first for Churchill. And we just had 4 girls at the state meet who are all right here. We have Lauren Larson, we have Emily Ashton, Kelsey Wasikowski, and Kylie Taylor. We couldn't have done it without, or they couldn't have done it without all 4 of them swimming all the races that they swam. So we had Kelsey swam 100 breaststroke, set a new 5A record, which is really exciting. Hang on. Oh, I'm supposed to be in it. And then we have Kylie Taylor, who was first in the 200 IM and first in the 100 backstroke. And Lauren Larson, first in the 200 free and third in the 100 fly. And then Emily swam in the 100 fly and the 100 back. And then all 4 girls won 2 relays, the 400 freestyle relay and the 200 medley relay. And that's what really won the meet. So that was really exciting. And not only did they win, I ordered a record board just in January, and I've already had to replace half of the records because of their swims in the last half of the season, or in the last few weeks of the season. And we have Charlie Page Jones was up at state as well, first in the 50 free and first in the 100 fly free. I mean, undefeated basically in the last 3 years. We didn't have a state meet last year. And so he also set not only his 5A record, but the OSAA state record for his swim in the 100 butterfly. Second Oregon Sports Award for the male swimmer of the year. So how about a group? Did I miss anything? I said I didn't miss anything.
They want a group.
Group, come on up. Okay. Yay. Thank you to the board for taking time. These kids have worked really hard all these
Thank
years.
you. Awesome.
Really short.
Congratulations to all you athletes. That's quite impressive. Okay, now it's time for comments from the board chair. And first of all, it's really fun to follow such a celebratory thing, and it feels like we're getting back a little bit more to normal. So anyhow, I want to warmly welcome our 2 new board members, Michelle and Kirthi. I want to advise them to get lots of rest, eat well, drink water, and to be ready for the crash course in being a school board member. Tonight is their first regular school board meeting, but it's actually their 5th meeting with the board already, so since they've been sworn in just a week ago. So I'm so pleased to add their talents, experiences, and skills to our board, and I look forward to getting to know them better. As some of you are aware, Monday we announced our 4 superintendent finalists for 4J. We're excited about the finalists, and if you have not already done so, go to the 4J website to learn about them. It took a lot of work and effort to get this far, and there's more work ahead for us as a board and our community to successfully complete this process. You will hear more about this later in the meeting. But I really want to talk more. This week is our National Teacher Appreciation Week. I always have very mixed feelings with designating a special day, week, or month to honor and acknowledge different people, professionals, every day and not just one day or 1 week or 1 month a year. It's especially true when it comes to our teachers. However, I will say by setting aside this week for Teacher Appreciation, it provided me the opportunity to really think about the teachers and reflect on the teachers from my past who've been influential in my life and who helped shape my development and life trajectory. Then I began to think about our 4J teachers who show up each and every day to support and teach our 4J students, and realize that they are in the process of creating those experiences and memories that positively impact their students' lives today and will continue to do so far into the future. And one day these students will reflect back on the teachers who influenced their lives and remember their 4J teachers. Teachers are arguably the most important members of our society. They give children purpose, set them up for success as citizens in our world, inspire them to drive to do well and succeed in life. The children of today are the leaders of tomorrow, and the teachers are that critical point that makes a child ready for the future. So I asked a few students what they liked about their teachers. A 7th grader said, "I appreciate that my teacher has a good attitude and the ability to keep the class focused so class can be fun. I like them to teach me unique and interesting things and things I want to learn about." A 2nd grader said to me, "My teacher is kind and notices the special things about me. My teacher knows I work hard and keep focused until I'm done and do not get off task. And she lets me know what she appreciates, that she really appreciates this about me." A 5th grader said, "My teachers are kind, supportive, and help me learn. My teachers can really show me new things in a way I can understand them. They can help kids solve problems really fast. I've seen them help friends who have a problem outside of school, and they really help them get what they need." And then I asked a couple of teachers why they love teaching. An elementary teacher said, "I enjoy my work as a teacher because I have the privilege of helping students to discover their gifts and interests. The school year is full of moments where I get to witness times of discovery, self-awareness, and growth." And a high school teacher said to me, "I value the authentic relationships that I can build over time with students through consistency, structure, and building a foundation. I start by establishing a respectful relationship and then bring in humor and fun. I take seriously the knowledge that I can help shape my students' future and hope to help them be better equipped for opportunities and success in life. I find teaching stimulating, and it challenges me because of new content and always trying new ways to teach and make the content relevant to the lives of students. I focus on helping them think critically and independently and on problem solving. I focus on helping them have positive interactions with adults and on working cooperatively in groups with peers. And I make sure students feel successful and learn. Teaching is truly a tough job, but it is one where you can make the most impact in another person's life. I appreciate the skill, perseverance, heart, and dedication teachers bring to their students every day. Thank you to every 4J teacher." And now we get to hear reports from our high school representatives. I think we have 2 here. First, we have Yosween from Churchill High School.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the recognition about the scholarship. I really appreciated that. So Churchill's been up to a lot recently, and first I wanted to say happy Asian Pacific Islander Month, and then also happy Mental Health Awareness Month, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week. Just wanted to say that. So to start off with Mental Health Awareness Month, our Sources of Strengths class at Churchill has been putting things together at lunch in our courtyard. And just for example, for today, we had cotton candy. We had baby goats in the yard, baby chicks, and we had a little pony, and there was a lot of chalk going on and a lot of candy. And I went to it and I got to hold a goat, and it was very fun. I saw a lot of people smiling and just, like leaving nice notes and taking nice notes if they need one. So thank you to our Sources of Strengths class for doing that. This Saturday, we do have prom at 8 p.m. at the Wheeler Pavilion, so everyone's getting ready for that, and getting their prom outfits ready. And then we also have AP and IB testing this week, and IB will continue to go on to how long it goes to for the next 2 weeks. But so I know a lot of people and a lot of students are focused on that right now. And then our seniors are getting ready. We get our graduation tickets next week if you have your graduate requirements met. And then our senior shirts were designed by one of the IHS students, I think. And then we also are giving out our yard signs, which are pretty cool. I like them. And then for Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week, leadership did little notes and little like foldable cards and just kind of put them in teachers' mailboxes or put them on their little doors just to say thank you. So I think teachers really liked that and enjoyed that. Clubs have been planning things also for Mental Health Awareness Month, doing their own activities and how they can get involved during lunch in the courtyards. And then the Wizard of Oz play is going to start happening. I think May 12th that will be happening. And we're all excited for that too. And then there will be a unified basketball game, another one, and that will be May 26th at 6:30 p.m. So I think everyone's looking forward to that. I will be there too. I think it'll be really fun. Yeah, that's all I really have.
Thank you, and congratulations again. Okay, well now we have Johanna from Sheldon.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I have a short and sweet report for you today. Sheldon has been doing really well recently. We have some similar things to Churchill going on. We had prom 2 Saturdays ago, which was a huge success, and it went really smoothly for everyone, so that was great. This past weekend, we had a lot of performing arts successes, including the spring musical. We closed that this weekend, and that was a wonderful experience for everyone involved. And the choirs and some of the small bands went to state and performed in Portland, and they did a great job. Sports are still happening and going full swing. I know that a lot of those sports are having senior nights and celebrating their seniors and where they're going to be going next year. Our Sources of Strength has also done some things for Mental Health Awareness Month, such as today they had cookies out and notes that you could write to people and things you could share about your own story, and it was really cool. We are working with the African American Student Union to find a space in our school to make the display that Mr. Summerfield created for Black History Month that has kind of different clubs and cultural connections across different student unions to make that permanent on one of our walls. We also had a cool thing recently. One of our students did a mural in the gender neutral bathroom to try to combat vandalization, because that was a problem, and that has been a wonderful solution, and we haven't struggled with any vandalization of that bathroom since it was painted as art. So that is super cool. Yes, again, we have AP IB tests going on, so a lot of juniors and seniors really focused on that, and everyone else is just, they're pretty high spirits all around. So yeah.
Thank you. Sounds like a good time right now at school. Okay, so I think we're moving. There's no other students here, correct? Yeah. So items raised by the audience. I'm going to just read this introduction, and I think Carrie then will, so the school board receives written comments by email at board@4j.lang.edu and sets aside time in each regular board meeting to hear public comment. Community members can sign up to speak to the board by submitting their request online at 4j.lang.edu/board/public comment or contact the superintendent's office. The deadline is the Monday before each meeting. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes and cannot give their time to another speaker. A timekeeper will show a sign when the speaker has 30 seconds left and when their time is up. Speakers might offer objective comments or criticism about district operations and programs, but for complaints about individuals, the district has a board policy and complaint process. Please contact the superintendent's office at 541-790-7706 for more information about submitting a formal complaint. Tonight, it looks like we have 6 speakers who signed up. We have 4 people on Zoom. Well, it looks like we might have, she's in person. Anyhow, we'll find out. There's some people on Zoom and 2 or 3 people in person. So I will turn it over to Carrie Delph to help us with that.
Thank you. Yes, our first speaker is coming in as a panelist now. Colin Johnson is in the Zoom by Rita Gillihan and then Jamie Hart. Mr. Johnson, can you turn on your camera and join me for that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak. As always, I would like to welcome our 2 new board members. It is wonderful to see some new faces on the board. And I'm glad they've arrived. It is an incredibly important time for our district, given that we now have our 4 finalists for our new superintendent. I did find the original listing on the 4J website fascinating. I don't know which alphabet 4J is teaching at the moment, but that was not alphabetical. I'm glad to see it's been changed. But given my background as a researcher of equity and diversity in education, I took some time to look over the 4 candidates in more detail. And if you'll excuse me, I have a growling dog in the background. Apologies if y'all can hear that. First and foremost, I cannot advocate enough for Dr. Ustitanata and the soon-to-be Dr. Johnson, solid surname by the way. Both have extensive experience in academics and within the school districts. They're both persons with colour, a demographic sorely lacking in leadership in our district. A district, of course, which has been plagued with issues surrounding race under the current interim superintendent. I apologise about that. I think an errant squirrel is in the garden. Yeah, we coming from out with district, I think these are both will bring freshness that is desperately needed. Mr. Johnson comes from some of the best school of education in the country and comes after and alongside working in high need districts. His experience in developing equitable community for all in numerous states is untouched in the other candidates, and his time spent in the Chicago Public School District is particularly notable. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to actually submit this in writing. I have an incredibly upset little chihuahua here. Come here. Actually, we might be able to finish. Say hi, Gary. As for Dr. Sonata, he comes with a great background in both ethnic studies and comes with local knowledge. He spent enough time outside our district, however, that I think, as well as teaching out of the state, it gives me comfort that we will not be looking at more of the same. Indeed, the fact that some of his ability wasn't kept within the district previously speaks volumes to the open secret of how one gets progression within this district. This neatly brings me to our other 2 candidates. Neither hold terminal degrees, and while interim Superintendent Van Kar's reign has just been one misstep after another, she's overseen a spike in mental health issues, instances of racial attacks. Teacher morale is through the floor despite the 1 week of appreciation from admin, perhaps getting our contract in place would be a better approach. Mr. Day represents the same stagnation as the interim superintendent. This is not a position we should be hiring from within. Thankfully, we have the option to hire outside, which wasn't in our assistant super. While this is a huge decision, I do now have the confidence that our school board will make the right choice for our students, our staff and our community, and not the choice that Stanford Children at Oregon want. Thank you, and apologies again for the little dogs.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rita Gillihan. She'll be followed by Jamie Hawk.
All right. Good evening, school board members and Superintendent Vanikar. I am speaking tonight to request an update for parents regarding the North Region planning meetings and that parent participation is added. Parents are the ones enrolling their students into the schools in this area, and hearing the concerns and needs of families should be a priority. I appreciate the district is giving teachers a voice. However, it's crucial that parent voice also be present. Parents of Kelly Middle School, NYG in particular, have been waiting for the district to address the issues of having both schools in one building for quite some time. What is the district's plan for the future of these schools? I have been speaking at board meetings about YG not having the space it needs to be a successful immersion program K-12 for at least 5 years. At each meeting, I hear from board members that a decision needs to be made and that, quote, we need to stop kicking the can down the road. How many more times are we going to be hearing this? I appreciate that the North Region planning was a topic at the March 16th board meeting, but was disappointed to hear a reimagining of what was said at past meetings with Kelly and YG parents. Repurposing the Old North building was written into the bond so that there would be a landing space for either YG or Kelly or both to relocate and regain the building spaces that they have lost by sharing a building while the new North Eugene High School is being built. Now we hear that it is impossible to repurpose the Old North building because somehow the district miscalculated the cost from 10 million to 60 million. Even with the rising cost of products because of inflation, it's quite difficult to discern a $50 million cost difference in just a few years. Either is negligence by not putting the actual cost of repurposing for the elementary school, or the 10 million was simply a line item added to appease families to ensure a yes vote on the bond. Excuse me. Either way, a new solution is needed and soon. Family needs must be addressed in North Region planning. Everyone needs to work together as a community so that students are served and the North Region is uplifted. Please include us in your meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you. Next is Jamie Hawk, who is coming in as a panelist now. She'll be followed by 3 speakers in person: Amanda Fox, Teresa Beaver, and Mary Sang.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, I want to thank all of you school board members for everything that you do. This has been an incredibly hard couple of years, and thank the new 2 school board members for joining us. I want to start up foremost by saying I am trying to come to you as a parent of 2 children in the 4J school district. However, my career and experience over time is inextricably intertwined because I am, a psychologist working in our elementary school supporting the mental health of our kids, and have done my dissertation on standardized tests with young children. And I've had a lot of papers use my data showing the racial differences in performance and how it's not necessarily supportive of students. And so I want to thank Gordon for bringing this up as an item to address tonight, because it is Mental Health Awareness Month and Teacher Appreciation Week that goes along with that, because our teachers are doing absolutely so much to support the mental health of our children on a regular basis. And I am so worried for my own child, being a 3rd grader, and not being able to come into the school last year because his class was too large. He couldn't fit into the classroom. And so after all of that time, I absolutely want to have him spend time connecting to his classmates and his teacher and view his school as a community where he has a village that raises him and cares, loves him, and makes him feel safe. Because neuroscience, my background in neuropsychology, tells me that if we can't feel safe and connected to other people, we can't learn. We can't learn the problem solving and conflict resolution skills we need to be a good human in our world. But more importantly, we're not able to learn academics. So right now, some of the research that my principal has been looking at and seeing the disparity in their ratings on their SABRS assessment from last year in hybrid to now, it is astronomical how huge their emotional needs are right now. And we are taking away from that. I cannot go into classrooms to see students that need me for emotional support and mental health support because I can't answer because they are practicing or taking the state assessment. We are taking time away from instruction that they could be receiving for academics that they have so sorely missed but also that time that can be just engaging and like interacting with their peers. Instead, they're practicing for the state assessment. They are starting to take the state assessment. I'm talking to kids on a regular basis that are fearful and worried about how they're going to do and what it's going to look on their record. When it's like, what can we really be focusing on? I have heard so many people talk about putting mental health at the forefront. Well, we need to show that in action. We need to put our people in front of policy and kind of lead by example that right now our kids' mental health and their well-being is foremost the most important thing from elementary to high. And so if ODE right now is suspending those essential skills requirements for the next 3 years for graduation, why can't we also model that we also want our kids' well-being in mind? Because when they feel safe and connected, then they can learn. And we're not helping them do that with having state assessments happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Next is Amanda Voss, who is in person and coming to the mic.
Hello, thanks so much for letting me come chat. I'm Amanda, and I want to say thank you so much for the service that you do. I try to pay good attention. So I know you guys are up really late making lots of decisions and listening to each other and trying to like communicate through lack of sleep and food and all that stuff. So thanks for what you do. And also thank you new board members for joining. I'm super excited. I know everybody is for the whole quorum is for kind of thing. Will make everything so much easier. So thanks for your time and your service. I came tonight because I wanted to offer something. I've met with a few of you and I keep putting it out in email, but I want to keep offering that I would love to have an opportunity to work with you guys for board health. I know that Alma started some of the work with just communication and stuff like that. And I feel a little audacious coming up here and saying that because I'm just one person and I got my own issues and nobody's perfect. But I really like communication. It's something a passion of mine. And I would love to see our board work more efficiently as well as in more unity with one another. I feel like right now is a really critical time with hiring a new superintendent soon, as well as having 2 new board members come on. What better time to work on understanding one another, hearing one another, and feeling more respected by one another. The things that I have witnessed and heard lead me to believe that oftentimes at the end or in the middle of a board meeting, people are feeling not understood and not respected and just a lot of kind of chaos. And that's super understandable because we're humans and that's kind of where breakdown happens is communication and relationship. So just as I, sometimes need to tune up and go to a marriage counselor with my hubby, I feel like I would like to offer that as just one person or somebody else, even not me, but to dig into board relationships so that we can work more efficiently and have more unity so that we can do a really good job, because I do feel like your energy is spent better in other areas. I'm pretty sure you guys probably would agree with me. Also, in my research of all of that, I looked up the Center for Public Education and they had a cool little article on 8 characteristics of effective school boards. So at the sake of just sounding like a big hugger or somebody that wants everyone to get along, I wanted to also state that there is a bunch of research developed to help support the idea that this is important. So number 8 on the article said, effective school boards take part in team development and training, sometimes with their superintendents, to build shared knowledge, values, and commitments for their improvement efforts. And so, although I know that it's hard to put this on the agenda or spend time doing it, I feel like it'd be really valuable and it would save time in the long run. That's my timer. All right, thanks guys.
Thank you. Thank you. The next person is Chris Beaver, followed by the final Harry Stanger.
Thank you all for meeting with me, allowing public comment today. Growing up in the public school system was not a pleasant or educational experience. There were little to no creative art classes, no home ec economics, sewing, ceramics, or any other applied learning skills.
that would have me know what's possible in creative mathematics, like applying all of the educational tools that we have available to us for real learning. Sitting in a desk for 6+ hours, solving repeated math problems, regurgitating a skewed and manipulated history, being molded and programmed through social studies was a total waste of my time and my peers' time and the public's tax dollars. Yet, what the kids are being exposed to in many educational programs these days is really concerning to me. Not only is the books and the tools for skill building eliminated from the classroom, other than sitting down and doing your math problems and reading and social studies and all of this other stuff, but they're being taught sex education that is and gender roles and these different things that are completely not healthy. Having young girls and boys being exposed to this critical race theory and these different ways of teaching and learning, completely different than the way that we used to do things, is completely unacceptable. We have many different skills and tools that can be provided for our youth, our children, that have economic ways of developing their social skills, their tactical skills, and I encourage you to look at the curriculum and make good decisions about the education of our children. Thank you. Thank you. Final speaker is Harry Sanger.
Hello, Superintendent Vanderkar, Chair Newman, 4J Board. My name is Harry Sanger. So, I reviewed the applicants and candidate speeches for the recently filled board vacancies. Among the candidates interviewed as finalists, the biggest issues appeared to be equity, mental health, and teacher retention. Among the candidates not interviewed, mental health was also a recurring theme. But the biggest issue was not equity for some, but equity for all, or as it is more commonly known, equality. I also noted other issues raised by multiple candidates eliminated in the first round included bullying, better community engagement, special education, and academic excellence. A few mentions also went to nutrition, board dynamics, exercise, school choice, reducing class sizes, engaging parent volunteers, technological isolation, and providing transparency in curriculum so that parents can decide for themselves if the material being presented to their children is appropriate and aligned with their family's values. I hope that the new board can learn from this process and pays attention to these areas of concern. Instead of drawing ideological lines in the sand and dismissing constituents. I also hope this board can avoid the false dichotomy between champion equity or being accused of promoting racist or other culturally insensitive behaviors. At least half of the applicants voiced their support for equality or the equal treatment and equal opportunity for all students. Notably, not one of the 8 finalists interviewed shared this viewpoint, making the 2 equity questions seem like a political purity test. No, equity is not equality, but that doesn't mean equity is objectively better. This is a subjective opinion that should be open for debate. Extrapolating community sentiment from the applicant pool, This means that half of your constituents have no representation on this politically charged and divisive topic. When a board member sits up there and insults another board member for drawing a line in the sand, many of us can't help but laugh. This isn't just a line in the sand regarding equality. It is a wall constructed to keep out a diversity of opinion for this foundational argument for the role of the school board. The line in the sand comment was about having a former EEA member on the board. While teacher retention was a common thing among finalists, there's an error in thinking this can be fixed by giving the EEA more representation. The union contract prevents performance-based pay increases and forces the district to weigh seniority above all else. Because of this stagnant way of thinking, young teachers are more at risk and less well compensated, even the ones that students love and support. With that said, congratulations to the 2 new board members. As you can see, you have your work cut out for you, and I hope that this board can reconcile their differences to find compromises that benefit our children. Thank you for providing this forum to speak tonight. Congratulations to the Churchill Swimmers, and may the 4th be with you.
Thank you. Thank you as our last speaker. Everyone was great. Okay. Now we get to hear from employee groups, and I see Sabrina's in the audience. Thank you, from EEA.
Thank you, Judy. Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Vanderkar. My name is Sabrina Gordon, and I'm president of Eugene Education Association. EEA offers a heartfelt welcome to Michelle Shu and Kirti Hasija-Kaufman. Thank you for your willingness to step up and serve on the board, especially during such a critical moment in 4J. This is the week of teacher appreciation, and EEA encourages using the term educator appreciation because it is more inclusive of the many roles our members play. I'd like to say a few things about what makes educators feel appreciated. Statements of appreciation are nice. People like to hear that their efforts are recognized. Thank you notes and other tokens of appreciation are also lovely, and these are always treasured by educators, especially when they come from students. And if district leadership wants to express appreciation for educators, whether that comes from administrators or the school board, actions speak louder than words. Last week, the school board had an opportunity to appoint a longtime 4J educator to your ranks. Such an action would have shown appreciation and value for the voice of educators, but that opportunity was blocked by 2 board members. This action speaks louder than your words. So let's move on to other ways that appreciation for educators can be expressed through action. The appreciation that we really need are structures and policies that do not lead to demoralization by creating an impossible job, but instead provide the time and resources needed for educators to excel at our jobs. We want to be included in planning and decision-making about changes that will impact our students, such as how we provide special education services, how we support students' social and emotional needs, and the design and focus of our growing Eugene Online Academy. 4J could demonstrate appreciation by bringing educators into the work of planning these programs. We want daily schedules that provide enough time to connect with individual students, time to give meaningful feedback to students, and time to collaborate with peers to support students. 4J could show appreciation by examining schedules and including educators in making these improvements. We want to engage in decision-making conversations about how to use the funds coming to 4J from House Bill 4030, the Educator Recruitment and Retention Grant provided by the state legislature in response to the current workforce crisis. 4J could demonstrate appreciation for this workforce by authentically including educators in that process. None of these ideas are new, but as we continue to face the crisis of recruiting and retaining educators our students deserve, appreciation must go beyond a thank you for one day or 1 week, and instead must be intentionally woven into the everyday culture of 4J. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have Seth from MAPS.
Yes, hello, good evening, Board Chair Newman, school board members, and Superintendent Vandekar. My name is Seth Faflin, and I am the incoming president of MAPS. A hearty welcome to our new board members. MAPS stands for Managers, Administrators, Professionals, and Supervisors. Tonight, our MAPS employee group would like to give a shout out and appreciation to EEA and all of our 4J teachers. This is National Teacher Appreciation Week, as we've all heard, and it is a time to celebrate our teachers. As MAPS employees, we think teachers do one of the most important jobs in the world. They nurture the most precious asset of humanity, our children, and they are the ones teaching our upcoming leaders and creating our hopes for a better world. They give their hearts and souls to their students in their work. Teachers work many long hours and they think on their feet all day long. Research shows that teachers make about 1,500 educational decisions every single school day. And they have to do that while they're dynamically delivering instruction, engaging kids, managing the classroom, transitioning between activities. They are on their feet and they're thinking on their feet. So it's no wonder they go home tired at the end of the day. We know that in MAPS, all of us, none of us would be in these current positions without the dedication and support of teachers we had in kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. I think all of you on the board and everyone in the listening audience can remember amazing teachers who supported you, who inspired you, and who formed a deep relationship with you that helped shape who you are. There are ongoing teacher shortages. I hear Sabrina on that. We all know this, especially in some areas like special education where I work. If you're listening tonight and you have an interest in teaching, we encourage you to follow that dream. Our MAPS group would also like to continue to advocate for grow your own pipelines that support current 4J classified staff into becoming teachers and current licensed staff to entering into administrative roles. If you are in the listening audience, I encourage you to reach out to your child's teacher or reach out to one of your former teachers to let them know how much you appreciate them and why. It still lights me up every time I hear from one of my former students, many of them who are now in their 30s with kids of their own. So please take a few minutes to reach out and connect with a teacher you appreciate or talk to your school's principal to see about doing something special for the school staff. Finally, I'd also like to say a really big thank you to the 4J School Board for all their work on the superintendent selection process. We appreciate your dedication and the many, many hours you're committing to this. You are our Jedi Council, the ultimate guardians of peace and justice in 4J. Yes, it's Star Wars Day too, as well as everything else going on like Mental Health Month. So I had to weave in a Star Wars metaphor. May the 4th be with you, and thank you for all your service.
Thank you. I like that one. Okay, it's time for individual board members to speak. But before we go on, I just want to thank all the community members who took the time out to talk with us tonight, and to our employee groups for sharing their thoughts as well. So who would like to be first tonight? Kathy. All right.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you to all of my fellow board members for easing this transition. It was a very eventful 2 weeks, and I'm really looking forward to doing right by our community. I also, for the record, wanted to say my name out loud for all of you out there in the community. First name is Kirti, the T's like a TH, the last name is Hasija Kaufman, all of it together, spelled and pronounced the way it shows up on your Hasija, Hasija. So just for the record out there, that's where it is. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Who else would like to go? Gordon.
Thanks. Like other people, I want to welcome Michelle Shu and Kirti Hasija Kaufman to the board. And I really appreciate not only their willingness to put in hours of work, but also the great intelligence and experience that they each bring to this work. It's great to be back here in person and maskless, and I'm even more happy remembering last year that this year proms are going ahead and not being canceled. Just a couple of things in terms of parent involvement in the North Region planning meetings. I also support that and think it's important. I know that it was raised a month or so ago in one of the meetings, the idea of inviting either PTO or other parent representatives to join that committee. And I know that others were supportive of this as well, and I can't speak for anybody else, but I think that that included the superintendent. So I hope that we can do that at our next meeting. Teacher appreciation almost feels cheap, because obviously a week of thanks can't possibly measure up to what we owe teachers, and saying thanks is so disproportionate that it feels kind of inappropriate. As grateful as I am for the 2 new board members, I too was disturbed that in the lead up to Teacher Appreciation Week, the board issued a blanket refusal to let a former teacher join the board, with no reason given, I believe out of fear of giving too much say to teachers' views in crafting board policy. We need to move beyond viewing teachers as antagonists who can't be trusted with authority and to a period of true partnership. At the start of the year, I noted that on average, every teacher in Oregon contributes nearly $400 out of their own pocket every year to provide their students with art supplies, books, juice boxes, and other essential equipment. And that's not counting the hours that people work for free above and beyond their normal work hours. But I'm not only thankful for the hours of work, but also for the creativity that teachers bring to take potentially dull, standardized curricula and add things that make them come alive for students, or create units of instruction from whole cloth. We've been talking all year about the crisis of depression, anxiety, self-harm, and God forbid, suicide that is afflicting our students. And we talk a lot about the need for more counselors, which is absolutely true. But the truth is also that every teacher, in addition to being a teacher, also often serves as a counselor, as the one adult who a student trusts and turns to when things are hard, and who we implicitly count on to be able to support students in that way, and not just academically. Tonight, I want to particularly appreciate Ms. Bobby Willis, who teaches a class called Sources of Strength at South Eugene High School. This is not a class she created. I know Yoseline mentioned another version of this class at Churchill. But she did add and change the standard curriculum in ways that have made it especially relevant, meaningful, and vital. At a time when we all talk about the importance of social and emotional learning, too often there's not time to do this in a serious way, or even worse, we have companies selling us SEL digital apps on the idea that these are skills that can be taught, social skills in isolation. Sources of Strength taught by Bobby Willis at South is the real SEL, a whole class that engages students in free, honest, and meaningful exploration of both the stresses they face and the ways they can address those as individuals and collectively. I'm especially thankful for the creativity, dedication, and ability to really see the students in front of her that makes this class what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to go? You just go down the line?
We can go down the line.
Okay,
Add me to the chorus of folks saying welcome to Kirby and Michelle. I'm not sure I've ever been more excited to get to the consent agenda so we can do our first vote as 7 together. Very excited. So I want to first, after that, say how happy I am to have a meeting full of students and celebrations of student accolades. I'm so proud of the recognition all of you so deservedly are receiving, from medals to scholarships. What you have accomplished truly doesn't happen without a tremendous amount of work. For our student athletes, both those present tonight as well as those out in the community who weren't celebrated here tonight, I want to also be sure to call attention to the other work you do in addition to your physical training, which is the training of your mind. I have been pushed by Dr. Johnny Lake to really think deeply about how we honor our student athletes and on what we focus when we do honor them. I think we often focus on the fact that student athletes are demonstrating achievement, in this case at the highest levels in their sport. This takes a tremendous amount of training physically, but what we too often forget to commend is that athletic performance also demands training of mind power and mind development. This type of athletic achievement we honor tonight is in and of itself a demonstration of being quote unquote smart. Brilliant, really, that is just flat out overlooked and often under acknowledged. All of our young people are students. Some are more focused on using their minds for physics or poetry, others for tennis or soccer, and others for pottery or painting. But their minds are all being actively trained and deserve to be recognized for this hard work. Yes, if it's not clear, I was raised by a philosopher and was brought up with heavy discussions about the separation of mind and body. It's so damaging to our youth who excel in using their bodies to not see their minds as driving that excellence. So today I want to tell you how proud I am that you have earned such high levels of athletic recognition. But I also want to tell you that I recognize and celebrate the incredible minds that not only drive your athletic performance, but which also make you just as valuable in the classroom and all of the other spaces you occupy. I know so much of your time is taken up with athletic training. Sometimes that starts to overwhelm the amount of energy you can put into other endeavors, but your value is still true and monumental. Your value is not limited to the lane in which you swim or the goals you score or the yards you run. You are much more than the trophy or medal you just earned. And as you take your next steps in life, don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. and to the incredible educators supporting you in the classroom and in the pool or on the field or wherever you compete. I know we call them coaches, but really they are educators. Kudos to you as well. What a tremendous honor it is to see the young people you pour your time and attention into succeed at such high levels. I am proud of you too, and I hope our educators and students both steep themselves in the joy that is found through hard-earned achievement. I'm very thankful to Jamie Hawk tonight for keeping our focus on mental health and linking it to testing. I'm very much looking forward to our upcoming conversation. I attended the QPR training at South Eugene High School last night and have mental health wellness at the front of my mind. This conversation and work must continue to be amongst our highest priorities even after this focus month is over, but it also must include our staff, not just in the conversation, but in the focus of the conversation. And while I find the artificial designation of Appreciation Weeks a bit trite, I have to say how special this week has been. Making and serving staff food yesterday allowed me and my parent cohorts the chance to love on our children's educators in person for the first time. I know it's 2 years, but it feels like a lifetime. But it also cultivated an intentional space for our educators to break bread together. Companion comes from the Latin for with bread, and I'm simplifying that. I'm not a Latin expert. And these folks certainly are companions in their work, and in many cases consider each other family, and deserve to have the time and space carved out to enjoy the act of honoring the roots of this term. Time is a valuable resource in our educators' days, and I was moved by watching them share even a short bit of it. That said, it is imperative we don't stop at delivering flowers, feeding educators lunch, or sending a kind word. Those things matter so much, but so do many other things, including but not limited to, including educator voice in our decision-making, policy designing, and general leadership. It must include treating them as professionals by fighting to make sure they are well-resourced, respecting them by protecting their right to be creative in their work, fairly compensating them for said work, and committing to doing our due diligence in ensuring our teachers' morale is lifted high. Not just our teachers, all of our staff, from the bottom to the top, sideways, however you look at it. While I would personally prefer to see this happen in a big wave, a tsunami even, if you will, for now I will hold close every incremental step, and I hear Sabrina's call for action, and I am here to do my part in making our collective words match our actions.
Thank you. Leisha.
I'd like to say welcome, but I caught you at the door with your welcome wagon gift and everything, so. I got it, nice. Yeah, they did, didn't I get you? What? Trouble. No. Thank you for everybody that spoke, Amanda, thanks for the offer, appreciate hearing that and coming through. This week I had the chance to attend Beat the Odds virtually, and that was great. To see particularly the two of our folks from our school board. Tomorrow start charter school visits among the charter school review committee, and we have a number of weeks coming up, and tomorrow is our first day, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm also took over LCOG from Mary when she resigned. Waiting, like I said, 8 years, I got it, and they canceled the meeting for this month, so I was a little disappointed. This coming Tuesday is Instructional Advisory Council, where I think you and I are on that. I appreciate, I just want to say, Seth, thank you for saying reach out and thank an educator. So I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to say thank you to my partner of very many years. I think somewhere around 30 something. Yeah, 30 or 40, anyway. And I do remember sitting, picking her up in the parking lot after she did her interview here for a position as an interpreter back in, I believe it was 85. And then she moved up and became a teacher and has been a teacher and retired from this district. Did go back and work this fall in a classroom, in a kindergarten classroom, and still continues to tutor students online and when possible in person. What I appreciate is one, she hasn't gotten too mad with all the meetings, not too bad, but also that she supports and shares with me what we're doing here and lets me know when she doesn't agree with what we're doing here. So, and also that she has many friends that are educators that I get to spend time with and hear as well, because it's important that we hear voices, and I really appreciate that that she dedicated her life and her career to being an educator, teacher of the deaf, and continues to do that work and continues to volunteer doing that work. So for my appreciation, Seth, that's who I'm calling out. So thank you, Adolfo, so much for being there, supporting me, and giving me that positive and sometimes corrective feedback. Thank you. Laura.
So I'm going to start off my time with a quote from Martin Luther King when he was accepting the Nobel Peace Prize. The second evil which plagues the modern world is that of poverty. Almost 2/3 of the people of the world go to bed hungry at night. They are undernourished, ill-housed, and shabbily clad. Many of them have no houses or beds to sleep in. Their only beds are the sidewalks of the city and the dusty roads of the villages. Most of these poverty-stricken children of God have never seen a physician or dentist. There is nothing new about poverty. What is new, however, is that we have the resources to get rid of it. The richest nations must use their vast resources of wealth to develop the underdeveloped, school the unschooled, and feed the unfed. Ultimately, a great nation, or maybe a great school district, is a compassionate nation. No individual or nation can be great if it does not have a concern for the least of these. The reason I mention this is because since I'm in my work at Lane County, and hopefully while I'm here on the board, I hope to alleviate some of the poverty that I know that happens in this area in Lane County. And if I can help in small ways, I do indeed. I'm asking for a raise of our base wage. Ideally, I would love it to be $18 because that is what has been said would raise people to be able to afford a very basic life. Reasons for this, it's overdue. It would address long-standing racial and gender inequalities. It would fuel economic growth in our area. It saves taxpayers money by reducing the use of government programs. It is the right thing to do. We are the leaders and educators of youth, and the youth are watching. There is a great belief in, I like to call it an old-fashioned belief, but I'm getting up in age, so there's a lot of people my age who probably agree in this belief, that if you, and I heard these terms used today, the lower end of the scale and the higher end of the scale, or the lower wage workers, but the term lower is used a lot. We're talking about skilled workers that keep our systems running, that we could not survive, this school district would not continue to run without them. We know this because we have had this conversation many times this year as we were coming out of COVID. We're not out yet, but we on the board have the ability to raise our staff out of poverty wages, and I hope we seize that chance and do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle?
I'm going to keep it short as we started with Kirby and follow her lead. I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to serve. It's been really hectic jumping in, but it's also been such a warm welcome. I feel like I'm sort of keeping my head just above water, but there's always a hand that comes along and pulls me up and gives me more information, and it's very much appreciated. I'm especially grateful for the abbreviated crash courses, like the cliff notes of warmth of entering here and entering this space. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Cliff notes will be like library.
Thank you.
Can I have a point of personal preference?
Sure.
I've been married 38 years, I just got your text.
Oh. Thank you for that clarification. All right, so we're moving into the rest of our agenda. The first item is a consent group. We have 2 items on the consent agenda tonight. We have meeting minutes to approve and approval of purchase of the FOSS science kits. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Do I have a second? So my moves and Laurel seconds. Are there any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, 7 yes votes, so the motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to items for information, and the first item is receiving the fiscal year 2022 second and third quarter financial report, and we have Andrea Wells on the agenda. Andrea, virtually.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? We good? Okay, wonderful. So I am really just going to throw out a couple of comments on the third quarter financial report, because of course that's the most recent and pertinent to everyone. Some good news on the state school fund front. We have received a new estimate from the state of Oregon Department of Education indicating that our total payments from the state school fund will reach about $97 million. That is still about $800,000 short of where we had hoped to be, but with this increase in funding and the extra dollars we are going to see from our local option levy growth, we do expect to see at least our budgeted resources for the year, and if not a little bit more. So really good news on that front. Looking at our expenditures, something to note is that with the conclusion of our negotiations with the licensed union and with the approval by the Board of Compensation for our MAPs and directors, we were able in March to be able to do a retroactive payment to these employee groups to cover all of their back wages back to the beginning of the contract. So that means that our numbers for expenditures are a lot closer to where we would expect them to be at this time of the year. We still have a few things left to settle. We are looking at, we've pretty much finished off our accelerated payments for our leadership and our extended contract. That took a little bit more work, but we processed those payments for retro in April. You'll see those in the final quarter numbers, and we will be paying those higher value amounts throughout the year to the end of the year. Looking at our appropriations, one thing you might notice is that we're getting really close to our appropriation number for our nutritious services fund. We know that during this year, we have been receiving support from the state and from the federal government to provide free meals for all students. This means that we are spending more, of course, to buy food, to do all of the things that we are doing for families and for students. We will be coming to the board in either late May or early June to ask for an appropriation increase so that we can spend all of the dollars that we will receive from the state and from the federal government to support this higher level of programming. So you'll see that coming as a supplemental budget, and we will ask for your approval to be able to spend those dollars to pay for food and staffing and many other things that we have there. I'll stop now and open up for any questions you might have.
Board members have, board members have any questions?
I'll have to ask it.
Laurel, do you?
Can't ask it here.
Boy, no questions. Andrea, thank you for the report. It looks like we're in decent shape at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the next item is an item for information about an update on the key performance indicators from 4J Vision 2020 Strategic Plan, and for the benefit of our new members, because it took me over a year to figure out 2020 doesn't mean the year 2020, it's 2020 vision. So
Did we name that?
I was not part of that, so, but I kept thinking, why are we looking at this old plan? But now I understand.
I'd like to introduce Carrie Delp. She's going to begin with talking about communications, and then we'll bring others in when we get to those goals. So, Carrie.
Thank you. I'm also going to share the slideshow that contains a brief overview of some data on these key performance indicators that the board has seen in your packet, and provide just a brief review of this material since you have already seen it. The keynote about these KPIs on communications is that you'll see there's been a tremendous change in the amount and methods of communication in the last couple of years. Really what you're looking at is data here for the 2020-21 school year. The KPIs are looking back at the previous year, but you will continue to see these higher and different levels and methods of communicating. With the advent of the pandemic, it shifted a lot of the district's communications work to much more direct to parent communication and information sharing. So you see that the amount of direct to parent communication just skyrocketed. That won't necessarily continue at that level post-pandemic, but it was a significant change during the pandemic time. As we come out of the pandemic, a lot of that communication may be shifting more back towards coming through and from schools to their parents. It also shifted our internal staff communications. Now, these methods and these measures are only one small part of internal communications, but again, those direct to staff communications, all staff district-wide communications, we implemented text messaging to staff, and we also have increased the direct information sharing email to staff district-wide. See those numbers going up. Again, a significant amount of that is related to the frequent changes and pieces of information that are important for staff to have as things changed during the pandemic response. Sorry, going the other way. At the same time, we've had a reduction in the amount of local news media, and that's a combination of shifts in the local newsrooms themselves and shifts in what was available to schools with our school buildings closed or in hybrid and with restriction of visitors. We haven't had a lot of media in schools doing stories about school happenings, and we've had more direct to community and parent communication instead. But at the same time, we've continued to see significant increase in engagement on social media, people coming and giving that news and that engagement directly. And then we also have seen significant increase in website views and interactions, up to nearly 4 million web page views on the district website, not including any school, teacher, or individual sites. That's just the district site as it is, about 4 million views. You see that going along, you see spikes at particular times, like shifting with schools closing down or snow days, but there is always a high level of interaction with the district's communications online. Again, similar to other direct communications, we also have had a very significant increase in the amount of news being shared directly in that way as well, with web news articles going up about 2.5 times over the previous periods in that time, simply to get a large amount of news and things that are happening out to the community. Much of that information also being shared in email and other communications to parents. So that is just a whirlwind overview of those a few KPIs in communications, and I'd like to hand off to Karen Harden, who is going to speak to some of the KPIs for Goal 4 about our diverse world-class workforce.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. Before I have 3 slides that I'm going to share with you. I just want to remind everybody that the data was pulled in early February. And it just seems important to say that because there's been a time lapse, and I wish I could assure you that these numbers are exactly the same as what I'm showing tonight, but there may be a little slight difference. So I just want to acknowledge that. This first slide, because I know it's like when you're looking at a chart and it's in the evening, I just want to remind everybody this slide shows a combined staff attrition rate by percentage. So in the year 2020 to 2021, last year, our staff total attrition rate was 8.9. Of the pandemic, 2019-20, when it was 8%. The years before obviously were lower. The difference between the first year of the pandemic, between the year 2017 to current has been 3.2%. So we have lost more staff in the last few years than we had before. This is such a snapshot that this year we're adding a slide. So Carrie, if you could advance it to the next slide, please. We decided to dig a little deeper on last year to see if we could get a sense of the numbers. So this slide has not been in past packets, but we thought it was important to add. So this is the percentage of 4J staff who left employment with the district last year by employee group. So classified staff had the highest number at 11.1, followed by administrators, then licensed staff, then our supervisors and our professionals. One interesting note, and please don't misunderstand, we can always do better. But when I was looking at the data, before the pandemic, the national reports on teachers leaving the profession, before the pandemic, every year about 8% of licensed staff left the profession. And even last year during the pandemic, our rate was still under the national average of before the pandemic. And, you know, if you want to try to find some silver linings when things are so difficult, that felt like one. So I just wanted to point that out. Carrie, the next slide, please. Another one of the goals for the district, and specifically work that HR focuses on, is diversifying the workforce. So this chart represents the percentage of employees and the percentage of students in terms of non-white and diverse candidates, diverse staff and diverse students. So again, when you look at 2021, we did have an increase in licensed staff becoming slightly more diverse than the year before. So in 1920, our licensed staff was 14.1%. And then last year it grew slightly to 14.6. You'll notice that the administrators dropped a little bit. And sometimes what happens is an administrator retires. Sometimes movement between these groups impacts each other. So I would imagine next year, our classified number might look a little different because a lot of our classified employees are, I shouldn't say a lot, I'm sorry, a handful of our classified employees, diverse candidates, are venturing into the teacher pipeline and are working to become licensed educators. So there is always play between these categories, but you can see that overall, we are still under the rate that we'd like to be in terms of representing our students. We have work to do. So our students still have a larger diversity rate than our staff. And our goal is to have our staff represent our students. So that will continue to be a goal of human resources and the district as we move forward. Thank you.
Am I supposed to ask at the end a question? We are nearly through this brief overview of the slides that we have here. So if you have questions still here, perhaps we can gather them all up at the end. We have just a little bit here on the final goal number 5 about stable stewardship. And I believe Andrea Bells is joining to present about the slide.
I certainly am. The good news of this slide is that with the end of the Great Recession, we were able to leave behind unpaid furlough days, as well as the times when we budgeted for a ending fund balance for our general fund that was below the 5% minimum set by board policy. So that is, good news for us as we move forward. Next slide. And looking at our class size and staffing ratios, we have been able to maintain a staffing ratio and then even improve on those numbers. We've been working for the last, basically 5 years to do things to really help right size our staffing. This includes doing a secondary review after we do our straight allocations of staff by enrollment numbers to determine what class size may look like in each school for the coming year and add staff where needed to avoid large class sizes in the fall. We have also been working hard with a combination of funds, with general funds as well as student investment account dollars to add staff at all levels of the district and reduce the student to teacher ratio out there. So we have work to continue to do, but we are definitely making progress in every year.
So very briefly, we have some information about technology and then the facilities and the long-range facilities plan.
Hi, good evening, everybody. For the sake of bandwidth, I'll keep my camera off. I'm at a conference, and so it's a little iffy out here. Looking back, due to COVID, there was a significant impact to the technology department as we shifted to make resources available to all staff and students. I'll touch on a few of these briefly. There's many on the list. The most significant one was ensuring that all staff and students have access to technology devices, as well as hotspots. We were able to provide families that had no internet connectivity with access to free Comcast Internet Essentials, sponsored by the district. We deployed numerous technology tools to assist staff and students in the classroom. We were able to maintain the deployment of our voice enhancement solutions into the classroom while students were out in hybrid. We have seen a decline also. One of the major tools that we invested in to support some of this teaching and learning, that was Zoom. So Zoom today is down about 90%. That shows the significant impact that it had while we needed it. Another item just to mention as well is significant projects as a result of the 2018 bond. Many of those were put on hold as we shifted to deliver for COVID. Many of those projects will now be resurrected and kickstarted again. So we're looking forward to the next outcoming year.
Thank you. That was Steve Menachemson, and then I believe Brian Spain, the facilities director, is joining us to present briefly on the long-range facilities plan progress.
Good evening. So the long-range facilities plan was our guiding document for the development of some of the projects within the 2018 bond. And so with that guiding document, the bond was passed thanks to the voters, and we continue to complete our work at Edison, which will be wrapped up over the summer, as well as Gillum with the expansion there. Those will be ready for the fall of 22. So it's exciting to see those things coming together. North Eugene High School continues to be on track and still planning for a fall of 23 opening. Canvas design is complete. It's in for permit review, and we're also bidding that project now. We'll have some numbers to be able to share with the community and the board here shortly. We've also completed recently some of the equitable athletic facilities for the district. It was exciting for a lot of the softball teams across the district to be able to use their new facilities for the first time this season. So we continue to work on other maintenance work around roofing and safety improvements at the sites, and we're also working on planning for some of the CTE stuff as well. So some of the updates as we progress through the long-range facilities plan.
Thank you, and that is the remainder of the slides from the KPI presentation.
Okay, so now I think we're open for questions, and I think everyone is still here to be able to answer them. Gordon, you had your hand up, or what? Actually, let me just go to Laurel because she started earlier and then go to Gordon.
Okay. I have a few questions. So we'll just kind of get back to that slide. Moving the whole thing. Okay. So this would be Karen, and it was the slides presented are just, it didn't say percent until you said that, so I appreciate learning that. But I also, there's not a great frame of reference just to get us percentage of like 8.9. How much staff is that we have lost this year? And this is a two-part question that you can answer both together. Is I don't understand. This must be my ignorance. I don't understand why the numbers would be different if these are from a previous school year. So please explain that, because you started with that and I was like, well, what am I missing? What am I not understanding?
So I want to make sure I understood, Laura, because I want to answer your question. I don't know if it's my internet connection, but it sounded like you were asking why is first of all, I heard the first question was how many people is 8.9%? That was your first question. And I really, I apologize for not having that exact number. This format is the format that we've presented KPIs for a number of years. So I pulled the percentage. I can and will get into the board packet the number that means. I don't want to make a wrong estimation tonight. So I will get you a number, Laurel, and I apologize. I'll make sure that happens. The second question was the one I'm not quite sure I heard, Laurel. So if you could please repeat it, I want to make sure I get it.
Well, it was just for me to understand, because you started by saying, sorry, these numbers were pulled in February, so they could be different. But then as we went through it, I'm like, these are all from previous years. So what am I missing? How would the numbers be different?
Thank you. Now I heard you, so I can answer the question. So what I meant is oh, you're right. I apologize. That was not a great sentence, because this is a complete number from last year. I was thinking February, pulling the number might mean something different for this spring. You are correct that my sentence did not make sense.
Well,
This
I
data,
like that.
yeah, this data is from last year, and it wouldn't have mattered if I pulled it in February or if I pulled it 2 days ago. So thank you for the correction.
So the last question I had, it has to do with our diversity, and I always get worried when I just see diversity as a lump. Like basically white is the standard and then everybody else. So could we have those numbers pulled out of who exactly we are hiring, and so we could have that information?
Yes. Again, Laurel, for the sake of the KPIs, I realize that this is high level, big numbers. Again, for the board packet, I would be happy to break it down so that you can see employees by group. I would not employee group, but by their identity. So I can get that data and get it to you for the board packet, or the board memo.
Do we see this at other times of the year and this is just like a formality, or should I be asking this now?
No, this is the right time to ask, Laurel. The KPIs are done once a year. So your questions are right on spot, and we'll make sure we get them for you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Don't go away, Karen. And I know every time we present data, everybody always wants more. In my case, I'm interested in the attrition rates that you showed. If, again, not right now, but if we can get, whenever you provide the other stuff, I'd be interested in seeing it broken down by major occupational groups, so among classified staff, EAs, food service, bus drivers, and similar teachers, counselors, whatever. And then also staff of color, or maybe by the identity breaks that you were talking about with Laurel. And then at least for, maybe for everybody, certainly for teachers and EAs, I'd be interested in seeing like people in their first 5 years, because I know there's there's a lot of people nationally who quit the education profession in the first 5 years. So just to get a little more detail of trying to identify if we want to improve these numbers, where should we be focusing and what's going on. So that'd be great if that data exists and you could get those breaks to us at some point, that'd be great.
I will learn if that, I believe I heard you say 3 categories that you'd like a breakdown, and I will see if that's data that we can pull it and report back.
Thank you. And then my one other question is for the slide about class size, teacher-student ratio that I think Andrea showed, but I might be wrong. I just wanted to read. Yes. So I have this frustration, and I feel like we've talked about this every year, which is we have this statistic, which is the ratio of licensed staff to students, which is different from how many kids are there average in a classroom. And maybe they're both valuable, but I know like the licensed staff, students per licensed staff includes counselors and nurses and assistant principals and lots of other things. And so I think every time we show that, I have the reaction like, oh, is my kid the only one with 37 kids in her class? And I just, I know this makes the numbers look better, but it's not, and I'm not saying that anybody's trying to hide something, but it'd be useful for us to see what the average number of students is in class. And that may be, maybe that's really different from school to school or from grade to grade, but whatever's the meaningful way to say it, I think that's a critical thing that we need to know in addition to this statistic. So if we could get that also in whatever, on whatever schedule you can get it to us.
Gordon, if you are interested, we actually do provide average class size as a piece of information in our budget document. In the section that talks about each one of our schools, there is a chart that talks about allocations of staff, and it includes historic average class size. So that might be a good place to start, but we can definitely get more detailed information if you want to dig down into those numbers.
I'm happy to look at that, and then if I have more questions, I'll let leadership know. So don't do any work yet. Maybe it's all there.
Okay. Thank you.
Maya.
I have a question about something. I'm curious if something has been learned through this, and I obviously things have, but a very specific question. And I'm not sure if my question is for Steve Menachinson or if I did see that Kat Lang is on, so I'm just putting it out there for folks to hear my question. I'm curious if the pandemic, what we have learned from the pandemic in terms of students and possibly staff who need augmentative and alternative communication devices, and supports and systems and strategies and tools and all the things that go into supporting people who have difficulty communicating using speech. I'm wondering, I know that's often an accommodation that I hear some frustration from parents around, and I'm wondering if going online taught us something about that need, if it was demonstrated at a level that we thought, or if we were surprised at how many students and staff spoke up needing that, if we felt like we fulfilled that obligation, and also how that might be carried through now that we are down and Zooming by 90%. And if you don't have an answer now, I understand. I would love to learn about that. I don't mean to put you on the spot. So I do understand that might need to come later, but I just want to know what we've learned and how we're applying it to our continued learning now that we've moved away from a digital exclusive space. It's okay. I guess I can send that to you or if you noted it, or
I noted it in my notes, and it could be that Steve can't hear you, so.
It's, and I know he's at a conference.
Yeah.
No, I can hear you. It's just, I wasn't sure if this was going to be a CAT specific question due to accommodations for students. I will just add that the technology that we've deployed in the classrooms and that we continue to deploy can accommodate the integration of those types of technology devices as needed by students. But I can't comment as to the percentage or the increase, decrease, or the change to what is needed as a result. I don't have visibility into that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Actually, I think, and I'm not asking for this in the near immediate future, but I think it'd be worthwhile reflecting just in a general way, what learnings we had in the pandemic and what of those we would hang on to that have actually are things that we learned about. And I know there's probably a lot in technology in that category. And again, it's something I think worth reflecting on before that knowledge goes away, but I'm not asking anyone to do anything tomorrow. Might be a good summer thinking project or something. But I did have one very specific question for Karen, and you probably know the answer, and I probably should know the answer. In the attrition, in the people leaving number, are retirements included in that? So if you retire, so that would also include that, okay.
Yeah, attrition includes every reason in which an employee no longer works for 4J.
Thank you. Any other questions? Why are your lights still on? Were you done? All right. Thank you. We got through the KPIs. I can't believe it. It's May. All right, moving to the next item for information, and it's just, we want to just review the next steps in the superintendent selection process for, just to remind the board where we are and the community where we are, and my name's on here, but I'm gonna, and Maya and I are on the subcommittee, and so Maya's going to begin, right, Maya?
I will begin. And I might call on you, Carrie, to assist us a little bit here and there, and sooner than later, because you'll see in a second. But I first want to remind everyone who has already seen it, and for those who haven't, that we have announced our 4 finalists. They are listed on our website. And in a moment, Carrie will walk us through how to see that, but I just want to say congratulations and express my excitement and appreciation to the 4 folks who have put themselves forward and have undergone quite a process and are all highly qualified and bring a very different flavor to their prospective work in these positions. So I am going to go in alphabetical order by last name. I'm just checking that I got my alphabet correct. So the first person is Andy Dye, who currently serves as our Director of Secondary Instruction. Lynn Johnson III, who is wrapping up a doctorate at Harvard and previously served as Deputy Superintendent of Financial Operations at Shelby County Schools in Memphis, Tennessee. And then here's where I need your help, Carrie, because I know his first name is Ethan, but I have been pronouncing his last name using a Spanish pronunciation, and I now know I have it wrong. So can you say it for us?
Yes, it's Ivan Udosinata.
Okay, thank you. And I will get that correct, because that's important. I appreciate learning names, and so thank you. And then the last person is and Ethan served as our principal at North Eugene High School before heading to Salem Kaiser to serve as assistant superintendent up there, and did many things before that as well. And then last in alphabetical order, but not least, is our current interim superintendent, Sydney Vanderkar, who I think you've done every single job in the district, so I'm not going to list them all, but I believe started off as a substitute teacher and got hooked and has stayed and really covered a lot of territory. So welcome to that list of people and the excitement that is to ensue. The next steps will take place next week on May 11th and 12th. Wait, before I continue, Carrie, will you do a quick run through of where on the website someone can find it when it's not front and center?
Absolutely. So information about the 4 finalist candidates is available on the district website. It's been sent out to parents, sent out to media, sent out to our community subscribers. But for anybody who doesn't have that direct link and is wanting to go to the district website and find this information about the finalists that have been selected, I'm going to share my screen. If they go to the district website, which is 4j.lane.edu, right now it's front and center. There's a single main news article that's always on the home page, but that will be superseded by other news at some point. In that case, the most recent 5 news articles are also always in this district news area at the bottom of every page on the website, and in fact also on many 4J school websites. You could also go straight to the superintendent selection process right here in the Hot Topics menu. That will remain there throughout the rest of this process. And there are links there to recent news updates about this process, and you can go to those superintendent finalist candidates there now. Each of the finalists has some bio information linked and also an introductory video. So there are links there to those that people can go and watch online, about 5 to 8 minutes videos there. And then there also will be an opportunity for community members to watch the actual interviews with the candidates. A couple of the interviews with the candidates will be live streamed and also recorded and available for viewing after, but they'll be live streamed on the evening of Wednesday, May 11th. And that information also will be posted on the district website and shared out in all those many ways, seeking to make sure that as many people as possible have the opportunity to tune in and then share their feedback and thoughts through a survey form that the district, or that the board's consultant on the advisory group is developing and will collect.
And to add on to that, just a few details that we will have interviews with a handful of panels that have been comprised of folks who either self-nominated or were nominated, and our consulting group on compiled names to offer us a representative collection of folks. And those panels, there's one for licensed staff, one for classified staff, one for school administrators, so that would be principals and vice principals, and then one for the other folks in that MAPS category, so specifically managers, administrators, and supervisors. But since we have a couple of internal candidates, none of the folks in that category will be anyone who report directly to the superintendent. The last 2 panels are a combination of parent and community members in one and students in another, and those last 2 panels are the ones that will be televised or Zoomized, I don't know what word that is, but to the community and recorded for accessing at your convenience on May 11th, as Carrie noted. All the panelists are receiving anti-bias training with the ALMA consultants, and will be solicited for ideas for questions to bring to their own panelist interviews. As well as all of that, we're asking a lot of our finalists, so thank you in advance to all 4 of you. There will also be an opportunity for an interview with us, the 7 members of the school board, as well as a meet and greet opportunity done in a round robin style, if you will, with our employee group leadership, or else designated members of the employee groups as chosen and designed time space by those employee groups. So classifieds union is OSEA, licensed union is EEA, and then we have that MAPS category of managers, administrators, principals, and supervisors. The last thing is in-depth reference checking that will include site visits. Kind of weird to call 2 of the candidates having a site visit, but we will do the same type of probing for all 4 candidates, whether you live in Salem, Memphis, or Eugene. So that will be the last step before we as a board begin processing feedback from the community and our deliberations.
Thank you. And there's one thing, did you mention the survey?
I did not mention the survey.
Oh, there will be a survey posted on the website so that people who watch the interviews afterwards, if you aren't part of the panel, you can complete it. It's not up yet, but it will be after the week of interviewing. So we'll be sure and announce that. It'll be on the website, which Carrie just gave you a tour. So thank you. When are we? When are we back? We're interviewing on the day of May 12th, that we're whenever, yeah.
In the afternoon.
Don't do that so quick.
I'm sorry, it was so much to go through, I didn't want to keep us here till 11.
I thought that was the 11th.
The 11th are the other panels, and then our interview is on the 12th.
On the 11th is all the panels, and then on the 12th in the morning is the work group meet and greets in the morning, and then us in the afternoon.
Okay, we're ready for items for action, and the first item for action is approving the 2022-23 school calendar, and we have Christine Nesbitt, our general counsel.
Good evening. Last week I gave a fairly detailed description of the proposed calendar, and I haven't heard any feedback from members of the public or EEA. So recommendation is that one of you make a motion to approve the school calendars.
So I move to approve the school calendars.
Is there a second? So, great. We have Maya has moved and Alicia seconded the approval of the school calendars. Any discussion? Gordon.
Thanks. I'd like to make an amendment that I hope will be friendly, but I don't know, which is together with authorizing the calendar, that we also authorize the district to use all of the instructional minute credits that are allowed by the state. And just to explain this for people listening who may not know, or to new board members, the state requires a certain number of instructional minutes every year. And I believe until, I don't know, until fairly recently, and the state allows you to claim up to 60 hours of recess, 30 hours for professional development, 30 hours for teacher conferences, and sometimes some for school closures, to count those as instructional minutes, which creates the possibility for more flexibility in the school calendar as things go on. Us authorizing these minutes does not make anything happen, does not require the district and the superintendent to use them, but it means they're available without having to come back to us. So that's my proposed amendment, is that we authorize the calendar and authorize use of all the instructional minute credits allowed by the state.
Is there a second to that amendment?
A second.
So Gordon moved that we authorize the allowances and Laurel seconds it. Any discussion?
So feel like deja vu.
Yeah.
We went through this at the beginning of last year and before that, and was recommended by staff, and I agree that we shouldn't do something like this. It's reckless. It doesn't give us the flexibility at the end. We can always come back. But I would be curious. I know it was kind of sprung on us here without time to think or process. But I'm wondering if I could hear from our staff their recommendation on this.
So last year, in the fall, August, similar, I think, proposal was made. We will be coming back to the board and later. We were gonna do it earlier, but then we got risk of snow in March, and so we decided to wait. So we have a couple of groups that will need the board to give us a little bit of leeway. And so we just haven't done it yet because we're waiting now, because apparently the weather's weird. So we would have liked to have processed and talked about it. I'll let Christine add anything that she might have.
I don't really have a comment, but I think it may create an unintended consequence of placing pressure on the administration to exhaust all the minutes and thereby, or exhaust all the, what do you call it, the credits, and to thereby reduce instruction time for our students. I note that the calendars already reduce student instruction days by 2 as compared to a normal year next year. So we're not even quite back at full number of student days for next year. Thank you. Laura, you got your hand up.
Yeah, so as far as my understanding for this doesn't need, this is something that we're giving a superintendent possibility of using, so it actually does nothing unless the superintendent needs it. That is how it was explained to me by, well, last time this was brought up, and it wasn't last year, it was the beginning of the school year, so now I wasn't here at the end of last school year, so I couldn't bring it up then, but I would like and believe in giving administration, maybe because I'm in it, but the ability to have the tools in the toolbox. Do they have to use all the tools? No. But having access to those tools is very important. And I will remind the board that staff had to ask for additional, I'm not gonna say this right. Somebody else said it right. Additional minutes this year to use for staff because of they needed more time. I don't have all the lingo. I'm not an educator. Well, I do educate people, but not just the lingo. So
Are you talking about the COVID relief days?
yeah.
Yeah, so we asked for the allowances.
Yes, and this is after you recommended us not giving the minutes to you. So this year, I suggest we do it. We do not know who our superintendent will be next year, and it would, I believe, it's very kind to set people up for success in case they would like this. And if they don't like it, they will not use it. Thank you.
Other comments out of the,
So I remember talking about this in August as well, and I can only remember, and I apologize to my board colleagues, but I can only remember what was driving me to support that in August. And it was a concern of what was coming up and the hope that those instructional minute allowances or hour allowances would be used in a way to support social emotional care. And I want to emphasize that I don't think that ODE would give us those if they didn't consider them valuable to the concept of instruction, right? So it's recess at the K-3 level, it's parent-teacher conferences, and it's PD, which are all things that profoundly impact the instruction that our students receive. So they don't translate to seat time, but they translate to a quality of instruction that I think, it doesn't feel reasonable to argue against that, considering Oregon Department of Education has put that forward as a stated value when they make these allowances. I feel strongly that we need to add this to our collection of resources. We've been listing the number of ways in which we are supporting our students, not just in social emotional care, and I mean that separately from learning, as well as supporting mental health wellness. And so many of those things, frankly, cost a tremendous amount of time, and I think that what is missing in that is time, and the time that we can give with these instructional minutes is another resource that doesn't come with a price tag that, say, Care Solace comes with, or adding a handful of counselors comes with. And I'm not going to compare the two. I'm just saying that for me, it is a resource that is not being tapped in a way that we really could use it. And sitting last night in a QPR training, which is for question, persuade, respond. So it's dubbed CPR for identifying students with, you know, suicidal, a relationship to suicidality. I was sitting in the library of the school that is experiencing a death by suicide cluster. And it just struck crucial that we do whatever we can do. And then I remembered what is happening at the middle school level with breaks. And I listened to this presentation and I heard Roger Brubaker and I heard Angie Myers, and they were talking about the same thing we've been talking about for almost 2 years now, which is the most important thing for the wellness of our students is connection and relationships. And that comes through time. That doesn't come through like group projects in the classroom. It comes through time. And I, again, wouldn't purport to tell you what to do with this, but it feels like it's giving a superintendent the power to have a resource where they can replicate that 15-minute break that our middle schoolers are getting again, that they got for so many years. I know my kids got them in middle school. At the high school level, and this also allows us with the gift of time to support the folks who we are asking to support our students. And my concern is that that without this addition of time, all of those other resources, honestly, in some cases, they add a level of stress. For a lot of people, the idea of reaching out for counseling or therapy after hours is another source of stress, even if it is a solution in the making. So I have a lot of feelings about this, and I just remember that it was originated from a place of hoping it would be used for social emotional care and mental health wellness.
So, okay, I'm gonna just put myself in the queue because I haven't been, but I want to say a couple of things. One is, I don't think there's an urgency to pass this tonight. I would like our new board members, first of all, to understand what it is they're voting on. This is sort of, it's complicated, it's got many layers. So I would say we could pass the calendar tonight, and if we have a request for staff to come back and tell us how they would use those hours, they aren't requesting it now. The other point I just want to say is when we were discussing this before, I think the superintendent and staff said they don't want us to blanket check, that they want to be accountable to our parents and our community. So when they need to use them, they can come back and tell us what they're using them for. Because I agree with you, Maya, if it's going to be used for mental health, but there's no, you know, I'd like to hear about that. And that might be something we'd want to support. But I think the idea was to be able to be transparent with the community about what we are going to use those hours for. So I think there's no urgency, and if we as a board feel like we'd like the staff to come back and talk about that, we can do that. Alicia.
Thank you, Judy. That's actually what I was gonna say. Are you ready for this? Table to a time certain. Let's wait and see and see what happens around the superintendent search. Give our new board members an opportunity to understand what's going on. Even when I hear the descriptions, they aren't all the same. And so I'm not even sure everybody's on the same page about what we're voting on. So I would like to table it to a time certain to the second board meeting in August. Not waiting because we'll have a superintendent decided. This isn't going to affect the, as you said, Laurel, it's giving them the option to do something, and everybody should be up to speed by then, and I'd like a presentation to go more in depth.
So I think we have to vote on the table.
Sorry, Judy, I was confused.
I don't know.
Well, let me just see if that motion though came forward. I think we might have to, I mean, I think that gets voted on before we then continue.
Yes.
Oh, the vote to
I'm just
table
looking
it?
at
Okay.
postpone. It's just a majority vote.
And it would cut the conversation off tonight.
Yeah, right, and then we'll do it I picked the second meeting in August.
That's a date certain.
Date certain, so we just need a second, right?
We need a, I know, I think it's just a motion, I don't think it needs a second.
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
not a
Does it-
motion.
does it-
Okay, give her a change, she's gonna do it. We trust her.
Yes, it needs a second.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Very cheeky. Okay, so is there a second to that motion? Any second. So Alicia moves that we table it to a date certain in August, second meeting in August, and Judy Newman seconded. So is there, it's a majority.
And we have discussion?
Probably.
There probably is. It doesn't say I'm here, but wait. Yes, it is debatable. Okay. Michelle.
My question is, what could be more urgent than the current crisis that we're seeing right now? Because it is a mental health and suicide crisis that we are witnessing happening right now. So I did you see the urgency?
Alicia?
Oh, I think Ryan.
I asked it, Laurel.
I didn't see who was
I
first.
just want to remind us that when we had this conversation in the second week of August, one of the reasons that we heard was because it would have been an easier conversation to have when we were discussing the calendar and even scheduling, which is not in our purview, but I would hate to ask the superintendent in the second week of August to implement any changes to a schedule. So for me, that's a little, I'm not comfortable with waiting until August. I also think that we can welcome questions from our new board members now. There might be answers available to them. It's got layers, but I'm not sure it's as complicated as we need to make it be. So I think we need to trust them to ask the questions and to speak up if they aren't ready.
Yeah, and the question I was gonna ask is time to actually think about this, because I'm not willing to make a decision like without the information and having talking to the people, so I would appreciate that. Y'all have all had time to think about this, and clearly part of in August, we've had 5 minutes, so I would appreciate a few minutes to actually think about it. I do believe in social emotional learning. I do believe we're in crisis mode right now. And I do believe in giving people the toolkits that they need to have those. But having said that, I do also believe in some time to look through and talk to people. It's effective. And if there are ways that we can put accountability measures on it to know that there's places that we want it to be, the time being spent to where we want, and we see our priorities, I feel like there's ways we can consider that. So I appreciate all of your input, but I would also appreciate that consideration.
I don't know who was next, if it was Laurel or Gordon.
Go ahead, I can wait.
So my question is for staff in the sense that when Maya talked about this, when this came up in August, then we were told that this wasn't a good time, but also, is it helpful to have it now while we're approving the calendar, or would it be, or does it not matter? Because it seems like we're getting different answers every time we bring it up.
The calendar really doesn't have anything to do with the actual daily schedule. The daily schedule is most impacted by changes in instruction minutes, and so there's some distant connection in the sense that there's a certain number of student days. But right now you're voting on the academic calendar. They're really two entirely different subjects.
So, okay, Michelle, go ahead.
So I just want to clarify that this is the calendar for next year.
Correct.
And so even if we added this, it wouldn't affect the kids before summer break.
And I think what I just understood is it wouldn't affect this, well, it might, I shouldn't say that. Would it affect this calendar? No. So, Gordon.
Thank you. I think it's, I think this is really important, and I think it's urgent. I understand the point that you raised, and I would, based on that, I would be okay putting this off till our next regularly scheduled meeting as an item for action then, but not till August. And I don't know how somebody thinks this is reckless. I don't think it's, partly because this was our district's practice until, I believe until 2015 when Superintendent Balderas came in. And there was an idea that maximizing, like that not using these, to me, it's kind of like saying everybody should do, 8 AP classes, like maximize the absolute maximum number of instructions we can have in a year. And I think that turned out to not improve instruction and to maximize stress. I think if we're talking about mental health, one of the reasons that I would like to, why I think this is important, is that it creates a little more slack in the school day. It means we could have more recess. I know that one of the things that happened as a result of not using these, this happened while my daughter was in middle school, is that the passing time between one class and another in middle school was cut from 6 minutes to 4 minutes. So that we could have like whatever that added up to, 150 more instructional minutes during the year. And what that really did, it's not like everybody got, 2 minutes more of knowledge in their brains every day, every class. It ramped up pressure on 12, 13, 14-year-olds at a time when they need it least. And it made it harder for kids to connect with teachers in the way that sometimes somebody hangs out just when a class is ending or gets to class a little early to connect with the teacher. Like, that's the kind of thing, as well as recess, that I really want to see more of. Now, I don't want to, and I don't think we can, micromanage. And this was one thing that, if I could say like, this is exactly how I think they should be used, or like, let's have a meeting about that. I think that that's not something that we can do. And that gets left to the superintendent or whoever else is in leadership to decide how to use them. But I do think, for instance, if we were going to say, okay, we want to return passing minutes to 6 minutes instead of 4, as one example, that does affect not the calendar, but the bell schedule, and that's something that has to be planned far in advance. That's certainly something that we cannot do in August. So, out of respect for a fellow member of the board, it makes sense to want to have time to think about something that you're hearing for the first time. I would support putting this off to our next regular meeting, but not beyond that.
I just looked at the date, that's June 1st, just so you know the date.
You making that a motion?
May 18th.
Table it till
May
June
18th is a
May-
work session right now, I thought. We have 3 meetings.
I think May 18th is our next
The
regular
work
meeting.
session, we could call a meeting,
Why do we only have one in May?
just the way it worked out.
Judy, you guys.
Okay, well,
Sid has
I-
something to work.
I agree with Gordon that waiting till August is too late. And so for the new board members, today we're voting on the days that we're going to be in the building. So the days at end of semester, days end of the trimester, when they're gonna grade, holidays, when does spring break start, when does winter break start? That is what we're voting on today. We can talk about, and maybe we can bring forward our minutes that we need to request from the board from this school year to the same meeting, but we can explain how many minutes adding 1 minute to the passing period takes for middle and high school, what it would take to put in a break. All of those over time use probably more minutes than we have in the reserves. So you need to know that as well. So what I wouldn't want you to do is vote for it and then us not be able to do whatever you're hoping to do. And so what we're asking for with the allowances deals with the daily schedule. And I think August is too late, which is what we experienced when Laura brought it up the last time, is that I think you wanted more recess. Can't remember what you asked for.
I wanted support with social emotional, COVID, and time.
Okay, so we would need to talk about it before August, but we could wait and we could catch whoever wants to get caught up in it. Then the two new board members we could explain and show them the data.
June 1st. Well, there's a discrepancy. I don't, could you clarify, do we have a board meeting on the 18th?
Yes.
There is, okay, then I didn't get schedule it, thank you. So it'll be the 18th, yes.
So I would move it to be an item for action on the 18th instead of today.
So we have to finish voting on.
No, he's amending
I know
that.
we're several
I think he's
amendments
gonna
down the
move to
road.
table it till the date certain now. We did vote on the
No, we
table.
didn't.
No.
We
We
did.
did, okay.
We're in the discussion.
Friendly amendment?
Would it, if Alicia would accept it as a friendly amendment, then I would amend to her motion to table it until
You
May
could just make a
18th.
new one, mine failed miserably.
Well, we didn't
I thought we didn't vote on it.
Voted on it.
I felt like it was gonna fail. Can I restate my Yes, Gordon, go for it.
So if this is friendly, then I would make the motion that we table this for tonight and we put it as an item for action on May 18th at our next meeting.
Whoever seconded it.
Okay, I had seconded, I accept the friendly amendment. Okay. Then, any more discussion about this one? Okay, then all in favor of, the tabling until May 18th, raise your hand. Okay, motion passes unanimously with 7 votes. Okay.
Now we've got to go back to the calendar.
Now we go back to the calendar. So that was the original motion you made.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question about the calendar.
Well, I think we're back at the motion, so we're on discussion then.
So can my
Okay.
question count?
Yes, go for it.
Great. I'm curious about, I'm looking at the high school calendar specifically, and may help if I pull it up. And I'm curious about, how this impacts, the placement of the grading days, and I'm thinking specifically about how, you know, the thing that happens with grading is that teachers donate their weekends to getting the grading done, because one grading day for the vast majority of teachers is not enough. So in order for the grading to be submitted on a Thursday, that means that they are using the prior weekend. What happens with those last 3 days then of curriculum and teaching?
Which day?
Like there's a grading day after at the end of the first trimester right after Thanksgiving weekend, which also means that teachers will be using Thanksgiving weekend to grade.
What are you talking about?
Right, so Thanksgiving weekend is the 24th, 25th, 26th, and 27th. They come back to school 28th, 29th, 30th, and then the 1st is the grading day. So grades are due on that Thursday.
My understanding is that there's some actually grades are not necessarily due that night. That's a separate administrative decision about the exact deadline. Sid, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought there are times when we make that deadline on the Sunday of the weekend following grading day.
That's my experience for high school. Sabrina's shaking her head, so she might have a different experience, but when I was a building principal, that is true. That the middle and high school staff had the weekend, but they would have the 1st and the 2nd.
Well, the 2nd is a workload relief day.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want with it.
Right. But can we get clarification if grades are due on that Thursday night? Can you wink twice if they are? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm being silly.
You can, but it really, I mean, we can get that answer for you,
Yeah,
certainly, if we wanna postpone this, but the options around that are, I mean, the grades are gonna be due when they're due. We can't, I would not recommend moving back, like, the end of the grading period so that it falls before Thanksgiving, because then it just creates an uneven trimester.
No, I'm
So
just
the
more
options
curious,
are-
I guess my curiosity that I was leading up to is, why isn't the grading day on the Monday following? So then that last week following Thanksgiving would be if we didn't have the Thursday, the 1st as the grading day, but rather we had the 5th and moved the start until the 6th, wouldn't that allow teachers to actually have a Thanksgiving break?
I think people were preferring to have 2 weeks with their kids, 2 full weeks with their kids, prior to winter break. So that's was the thinking, it's 2 solid weeks.
But the 2 solid weeks, I mean, I'm talking about the difference of 1 day, at the cost of 3 days at the end of the term. if teachers are actually getting their grades done over a weekend. I don't know. If it's something that EEA asked for,
Well,
I don't know.
EEA did not ask for that, and
So they didn't ask for the-
absolutely not. No,
the 2
this
weeks?
calendar reflects what they asked for.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was fully discussed at JCAC, so. I'm sorry, using jargon here, Joint Contract Administration Committee.
Gordon.
If Sid wants to address this.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I'll
Sid,
wait for
yeah.
that.
Oh, I was just trying, we were trying to bring Andy in. Is he in? Oh. Okay.
I just noticed that it also, it happens again after the second trimester. In terms of like having a grading, I guess I'm trying to learn and understand why grading days wouldn't be on the Monday following a weekend.
In some cases, it has to do with balancing the trimesters, so, moving down trimesters to 55, and then the other one becomes 59 days. So it's,
Gordon.
I'm not sure, but a lot of educators have had input into this calendar.
I see Sabrina Gordon wiggling in her seat or making faces, and I would wonder if we could actually either hear from her or put this off also till May 18th, so we could get a little more clarification between now and making the final decision.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, the calendar needs to be put forward, and we have talked to a number of groups, and, I can't get a hold of Andy right now. Oh, he's there. Okay. Andy, do you know the question on the table?
I do not.
Okay, so we're wondering, when grades are due at the high school level or middle school, do teachers, say the last day of the term is on a Wednesday? I'm looking at the November calendar for next year. So the 23rd, 24th is deemed a grading day, and the 25th is a relief day. Can you tell me if the grades are due on Sunday? When are the grades due?
Sydney, to clarify, the proposed grading day is December 1st, after the Thursday.
I was on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. The Thursday after Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Carrie.
And is there a question for Andy in there?
I'll repeat my question so that Andy can hear it. Andy, I'm wondering, just knowing the practice that teachers have in place of donating time to do grading and looking at this and seeing that the likely scenario is that they will be grading over Thanksgiving weekend in order to turn in grades on the grading day. What does that do to those 3 days in terms of compromising instruction if they've already compiled their grades, and in terms of students having a chance to get more stuff in? And why aren't we making Monday the 5th, so a Monday following, so a Monday, so it would follow a weekend as a grading day, and as opposed to a Thursday, which I'm not sure I've met, there's one teacher I know who feels she can do her grades in one day. I'm not sure how many others it feels like an overwhelming task. So I'm just wondering if it's a possible idea, or if it changes everything dramatically, or what. I'm just curious as to why we don't have our grading day on Monday the 5th and start the term on Tuesday the 6th.
That's easy in that for high schools at the very least, having a day after grades are submitted for counselors and students and parents to adjust schedules is extremely helpful prior to the start of the next trimester.
So I guess then my second question of what happens to those 3 days if teachers realistically need to work on grades the weekend before? I know for a lot of students, those last 3 days, it's not just about instruction time, it's also about getting work in, for example.
I'm not certain that I follow the question. I apologize.
It's okay. I'm not certain that it's, a big enough issue to push. It was more of a question and an understanding.
I'm sorry, Maya, were you done?
No, Gordon.
I always like to hear briefly from Sabrina Gordon when we're sitting, it feels silly. We're saying, oh, teachers say they want 2 weeks before the start of term, or maybe the grading is not doable. We have teachers elected representative here, we have to do what she says, but if there's clarification from experience, it just seems silly to me to sit here and not get it and guess at things. So I would like to do that.
Can I just respond a little bit to that? We have a committee that is a joint committee with teachers, right, and staff that work this calendar out, and which is something that we agreed to do. And so
This isn't changing that process. This is just getting information. It's not like a vote. It's just getting information.
Communication. Great, that's really, you just text me what you think.
I don't know how people feel about doing that. We've never done that before. It seems like we could just randomly call people up from the audience. Okay, let's hear. We have 2 other people that would like to speak to it. I don't know.
I don't think the president of the teachers union is a random person for the
No,
audience.
it's not a random person, Gordon, but we had a process that was worked out. Maybe it was a compromise.
But this doesn't change that process.
Okay,
We're not
Laura,
negotiating. We're just getting information.
So we're in the middle of a motion. Sorry.
Yes.
We're in the middle of a motion. Do I have to table the motion in order to make a motion to be able to hear from the head of the EEA?
Yes, you probably would, I guess.
So I just wanna table it. I would like to vote to table this motion for a short period of time for to come back to it during this meeting. I'll need somebody a second.
Okay, Laurel's moved and Gordon seconded that we table the motion and call up.
Just table.
You have to vote.
Okay. How many people would like, so let's vote on tabling the motion for 15 minutes. Okay, there's 4 yeses. How many vote to not table the motion? The motion passes. Okay. Now we're.
Did everybody vote? We have to all, sorry, we have to all.
So I voted for the yes.
Okay, so it was 5-2.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Sorry, I was probably this.
Okay, so now what is this?
So now I'll make your motion.
There's gotta be a motion.
I would like to make a motion to hear from the head of the EEA specifically around the question that was being asked, if you have a response to that.
Yeah. Do we have a second? Grading day. About the grading day. Okay, Laurel moved, Maya seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Alicia.
I do want discussion. No, it's an interesting conversation because it's a bit of a slippery slope, and you 2 are hilarious. But I do appreciate that Sabrina is not a random audience member, but you have to think about where this goes. And I know we're gonna hear from Sabrina, and that's great. I would prefer the text. But I do worry it's a slippery slope, and so let's keep that in mind. A lot of people have met on this, and then we get in here and we hear from I don't know who else would have been in that group that we aren't going to hear from, and if I don't know because I'm not in the JCA, is that what you guys-
JCSO.
Yeah, that it might be disrespectful to some people. And if we should be able to get from our staff, answers, and, sorry that, we weren't able to get that, because we should be able to answer your questions from, the staff that, were there at the meeting and that were staffing the meeting. So, I will vote against it, or did I vote against it? I will vote against it, but I'm sure we'll get a chance to hear from you.
I don't know who was first, Laurel or Maya, I can't see both ways.
I agree that it would set a precedent, but I think it would set a really important precedent. I appreciate being able to call on the administrative staff to hear this, but when somebody who represents a large swath of our employees demonstrates that they have some information that we're not hearing, I can't comfortably not want to seek out that information and hold value to that voice. We just talked last meeting when we appointed people about finding new ways to value teachers' voices. This feels like an important way to do that. Because I also have another question that I'm confused about, and maybe I should ask it before Sabrina comes up, but I'll add my other question that if we do decide to have Sabrina come up, I would like to hear about. I'm confused why we have just 1 week of a term before spring break when we are saying that this decision is because we want 2 weeks before winter break. So,
I can answer the question.
Great, thank you. Christine.
Yeah, I mean, the answer to that question really has to do with balancing the terms. And so if you put the, start Tri-3 after spring break, you just end up in late June, and we don't want to do that. It's just, people are pretty tired by that point of the year. So we try to compact the schedule. Ideally, we would have 2 weeks before spring break. It just so happens that this year we were not able to do that. We generally follow the local education institutions' calendars for spring break. And so University of Oregon is a major employer, as is LCC and other institutions. And so rather than place spring break in a really off week where you could create issues for a lot of families and a lot of educators as well, who spouses or children or daycare and maybe off, all those resources would be different than what is provided in the community if we changed our spring break to something. So that's kind of an anchor for us. Sorry, it took me a little while to explain that, Maya, but that's essentially why it would be strongly preferred to have either Tri-3 start after or 2 weeks earlier, and we just can't always get there. And if I may, I think the question for Andy Dye is, if Thursday, December 1st is grading day, when is the deadline for teachers to put in their grades? I mean, I think that's the central question, right? Because if they have until the 2nd or the 3rd, then, and I hear all the time about teachers submitting grades later than the day of, so.
So Andy, are you still there?
I am.
Thank you.
I do not have a calendar in front of me. I apologize. Is December 1st a Friday?
Thursday.
December 1st is a Thursday, December 2nd is a Friday, and the 5th is Monday.
Well, it's complicated. Ideally, the end of the day for grading would be the deadline. We need to run reports and get grades out to parents. If we extend the grading day, then it becomes ambiguous, and that's not really helpful to anyone. And so the end of the grading day is the day upon which grades are due.
So is that the first? Yes.
So the end of The day of the first, okay. Got it.
Can I ask Andy a follow-up question?
Sure.
Sure.
So, Andy, what I understood from the last time you popped up is that not only is the first the day that you want grades turned in, but it's so that the second can function as a day for counselors to do what they need to do, if there need to be changes or whatnot. Isn't that what you just, so that, like, we need that following day for counselors, which is why it's ideal, maybe you said it or Christine said it, which is why it's ideal for that to be a no student day.
Can I just point out that we had a motion and a second, and I'd be interested in voting on the motion, and maybe we'll get something that will clarify things. No insult intended, and I don't mean to limit any exploration of anything, but.
We will vote on the motion, Gordon, but a question was just asked to Andy. Let's give him a chance to answer it, and then we will vote on the motion.
Fine.
Would you mind repeating the question?
Andy, I'm just wondering if my understanding is correct, that having a grading day followed by a non-student contact day is helpful if grades are submitted on the grading day so that counselors have that next day to deal with hiccups.
That's extremely helpful. It also gives teachers the opportunity to see who is in their class and what accommodations or modifications might need be made before they start with the classes that day, or excuse me, the first day of that following term. It's a very helpful day.
So should we vote?
Did I ask one question? I had a discussion on the motion itself.
Oh, go ahead.
And I just wanted to second Alicia to your point. I just wanted to say I do respect that the administration has taken a lot of time and effort into putting these things together. None of this happens in a vacuum. I am purely in a gathering of information and taking in as much information as possible stage. So that's where I want to put that out there on this particular calendar thing. Thanks.
I just have a quick question. Are there secondary teachers, this is part of the discussion, I swear. Are there secondary teachers on JCAC that have participated in this conversation?
Yes. Thanks. Just and I just want to say also to our new board members, and then is that we also, we saw this at our last board meeting as an item for information. In the future, it'd be good to have these kinds of questions then. That's why we put it on for future action, so that we can get this kind of information to us before we have to vote. So, okay.
All right,
sorry,
let's
Laura.
vote if we're gonna.
Laura,
Nice try. So anyway, I wanted to speak to the fact of, the reason I proposed this motion is because I have found, as also a relatively new board member, starting in August, that process is a way to control the board. And there have been a lot of new things in no time for me to understand or learn them, and things just get pushed through, and it's been very frustrating. There's been many times I've asked for votes for just more time to understand and not been allowed it. So I want a new culture where we have somebody who has knowledge. We as a board to say, please share that knowledge. And no, it's not, Joe Schmo from lives next door who just seems to have opinions about the school board, but it's somebody who's integral to the system. I appreciate, so this goes along with all the information we get from staff. It goes along with everything else. I want this to be an inclusive system, not an exclusive system. And that's part of why I did this. So I call for the vote.
No, you don't want to do that because you have to take a vote. Y'all just quiet.
Okay, I'm calling the vote. All those in favor of having Sabrina Gordon come up to answer this question, raise your hand. 1, 2. We have 5 people voting yes. Michelle, Laurel, Maya, Gordon, and Kirthi, and all those that are not in favor, raise your hand. Yeah, right. process. Alicia and Judy, everybody knows. So come on up, Sabrina. So is there a question to ask her?
She might have been following along well enough.
Well, maybe for those of us who got a little sidetracked, I would repeat the question.
Okay. Since I started this all, I will repeat my question. I am curious about the decision to place the grading day on the Thursday following Thanksgiving vacation. That includes a curiosity as to whether you anticipate that teachers will be spending their Thanksgiving weekend working on grades, how that might impact those 3 days, and of the term if they do work on their grades, and why that following Monday and Tuesday combo might not be more appealing. After that, I'd love to hear about the spring break.
Okay, but that's enough for
Okay.
now. It's a complicated question, and I want to start by saying the process of the calendar coming to JCAC for discussion in our contract, EEA is advisory only. We are not jointly creating this calendar. We are presented with the calendar, and then we get 60 days to give feedback. And that is what constitutes our involvement in the calendar. So it's not jointly created. But I will say that this year we gave some input prior to the calendar being created, and then when it was presented to us, we saw quite a few of the pieces that we suggested, and one of those was to put these transition days in between the trimesters following a grading day, because just as has been discussed, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to transition between trimesters, and we made that suggestion on behalf of teachers, and we had the discussion at JCAC, and I felt that that was heard and listened to, and the district put that in the calendar. There's a lot to balance in deciding where these days go. As Christine has said, balancing the number of school days in each trimester, looking at winter break and spring break, and one of the pieces of input that EEA gave on behalf of teachers was that when we end a trimester and then we start a new one, and then a week later we go to a break, that week, the first new trimester, often feels kind of like wasted time, to students and to teachers. But given the beginning and ending of this current calendar, there just wasn't a better way to do it. We did talk about the possibility of, what if the calendar started earlier, but it just kind of came up to the time in the year where it's too late to make those kinds of changes for the community. So there are other ways to do this calendar and placing those grading days, but I guess going back to try to answer those many questions. It's not ideal to have grading and then a few extra days, and what are kids even going to do, but something that the district and the association did jointly in bargaining this year was we agreed to protect the weeks of grading and progress reports from meetings. And so those weeks it protects more time for teachers to have time for kids to be turning in late work and assignments and accepting all the way up to the end of the grading periods for the benefit of students.
That was very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So can I call my own question?
Yes, I think we're back to the original.
What's your question?
My motion was to approve the calendar.
Oh, okay.
Yes, okay, that's where we are. We're back to approving the calendar, and there was a second. So now any more discussion?
Well, I think if I call the question, it has to.
I think we have to vote to call the question. I think we're back to.
Oh, I thought it just meant.
So I think we should we're back to voting on it. And are there any other, we're at discussion, is there any more discussion? Okay, so now we can vote on it. So all those in favor of passing the calendar as it is in front of us, please raise your hand. Okay, that passes 7 votes yes, so it passes unanimously. Thank you. Laura.
I just wanted to say, I really appreciated this board process that we just had, and we I have no questions, things were answered by staff and by Sabrina, and I learned stuff from Maya, which I always do. Don't take it on me. So I just like to point that out, since so many people love to point out discussion is not a good board process. It actually is a blind board process, and I want to point it out because mostly probably because I was raised by educators, and discussion is how you learn things and move forward. Thank you.
Duly noted. So now we have a second item for action tonight that was added at the beginning of the meeting. And it was, I'm gonna ask Gordon to describe this action.
Thank you. This is about standardized testing and parents' rights to get unfiltered comments if teachers or educators have any comments on the values of a standardized test or standardized testing in general. So as I mentioned, I've heard multiple accounts from teachers saying that either they've been encouraged, you really need to talk about why standardized testing is important and people shouldn't opt out, or you can't say anything negative about it. And I'm not, I have never spoken to anybody in the district at the superintendent level or any other level who says, yes, who says anything but educators should have a right of free speech around this, like other things. So I don't even need to say, oh, where is this coming from or something, but it's obvious that it's out there, and I think that it's important for us to clarify. So I would like to propose that we adopt a policy which says this. 4J, and I can email this to everybody if you want, but I'll read it now. 4J school district employees' right of free speech includes the right to share their views regarding the value of standardized tests with parents and guardians. Whether an educator has positive or negative views, has no view at all, or chooses not to engage in such a conversation, parents and guardians have the right to know that educators are expressing their honest opinion without fear or coercion. Employees may not be explicitly or implicitly encouraged, directed, threatened, or retaliated against for voicing their honest opinion regarding a given standardized test or standardized testing in general. That's it. And since we're in the testing season, I think it's urgent that we adopt this, or the language could be a little different, but basically adopt something that makes that clearly known to everybody.
So just kind of clarify.
Yeah, Alicia.
So you want us tonight to adopt a policy that hasn't had any chance to be looked at by legal or gone through the usual process? Because you think that's what's gonna help ensure that teachers feel they can share their voice?
Yes, and I'm totally happy to have it as a provisional policy and if there's something that either legal or somebody else thinks that we need to adjust about it, to adjust it, but I think it's something that we need to do right away because this is happening now. And I think that this is something that parents have a right to, and that I haven't met anybody who disagrees with this, but a lot of people are getting pressure and feeling pressure around it. And I think that therefore we should put in writing what I think we all support, and that it's important for it to be clear that this is our policy and for there not to be any ambiguity about it.
So, if I might.
No, finish your questions, yeah.
No, I just want to say I'm really nervous and would not feel comfortable having you write a policy, having it not go through legal, have it not be vetted at all. But I am supportive of the idea that we ensure that people that we aren't discouraging people from taking tests. So I appreciate that you want a policy. I'm wondering, I don't know if I've ever done this, but that we direct the superintendent to send that message out. And I think that, just want to say, I think that if we're committed to that, there's a big button on our front of our webpage for opt out, and all the languages are there. And I think that would be more effective, because I don't know about you. Maybe I'll ask you this question: how often did you pick up the policy APM at the county? Or was it more effective?
I had it on my desktop,
So I can argue if you'd like.
So, Alicia,
You should know the
there's-
answer to
so
that.
first, there's not a big opt-out button on the front page.
No, I said we put it on
So
it.
I would totally support that, and I think this is very straightforward. I think having something as a policy does make a difference. People, I'm sure it'll get publicized, but I think that, I just think it's a hole in what we've done. I would also be happy to say, if it's, if it would be reassuring to say, we're gonna adopt this tonight, and we're gonna put on the schedule for May 18th an opportunity for district council or somebody to weigh in if they think there's something that needs to be tweaked in this. I'm not married to any exact words, but we're in the middle of testing, and I think it's urgent that we make it clear that this is our policy.
So Gordon, the important thing, and the reason I think we put this on the agenda tonight is there's an urgency. I hear that.
That's right.
So I think that if we all agree, and even if we policy, it's got to be communicated. So why don't we? I do not feel comfortable just throwing a policy, even provisionally. Let's say draft one, take the draft and look at it. We can vote on it, but we could still make that request to communicate this to staff. And I think I have a question in there, is what is communicated now? Are staff asked? Is there some communication or policy or practice that teachers have said they can't talk about it? I'm hearing that, but I don't know what exists. So I'm looking at whoever could answer that question.
Carrie, can you talk to what's sent out? Because I know we send out information to parents, and as building principal, I never told my teachers what they could or couldn't say. So I can see Christine looking, no, not looking. Okay.
Yes, all families have been notified about state testing, the timeline, and the option to opt out. There is a single click button on the Hot Topics menu that's available on every single page of the district website. That was added this year for the testing period. There are forms available online because we've been sent to families. Have actually been sent twice this year. Normally that's sent once, but we did send that out a second time to families. I am not aware of any district-wide communication to all staff this year around testing. Past practice and guidance has been that state testing is a federal requirement and a state requirement of educators and of schools. That educators are expected not to use their work time or roles in order to advocate for families to opt out, but they can provide information when asked about the forms and where to find them if a family wants to opt out.
Can you repeat that last part? The part about not using time to advocate for it?
Yes, so in the past, the guidance to staff from the statewide teachers association, although I'm casting my mind back to previous years, and I hope that memory is correct, as well as locally, has been that the expectation is that staff not use their work time or work roles in order to advocate against something that is a requirement of schools and staff, but that they can provide neutral, fact-based information if asked.
So if but if a parent asks them their opinion, can they give their opinion? Or
Looking back to a previous year, so may teachers and other staff respond to questions about testing and opting out? Yes, they can provide neutral factual information, direct students or parents to the state testing notice and opt-out form that's located on the 4J website and in the school office, but are expected not to advocate and encourage opting out, or presumably participation.
Okay, Gordon. Oh, sorry, Maya, you were next.
So considering that's what's happened in the past and there hasn't been anything this year, it feels understandable that teachers do not feel okay, as they've been instructed in the past, to not engage in conversations that aren't strictly neutral. I'm also remembering back to Jamie Hawk, who as a counselor talked about the impact of testing on our students' mental health. And I don't want to continue to not do the things that we can do that don't cost us anything, but support our students' mental health. So what I'm hearing in what we've told teachers in the past is that if a parent asks about their student, the teacher would not be okay to say either, absolutely, your kid would do great in standardized testing, because that is not neutral. And they also wouldn't be okay to say, your kid is showing a lot of anxiety in testing, and I feel confident that I can do a separate assessment. Or anything in between, as long as it's something other than, here is where you find the form. I think that here is where you find the form, even making it accessible with a click, which I 100% support, and I have forever, still doesn't make it accessible to all parents to fully understand the impact of standardized testing, the impact on the class time that is used for standardized testing. So I would like to find a way to tonight come to a conclusion, if we vote that way, that supports Gordon's proposal with room for language to be finalized.
I don't know, we just did a search here to see what the guidance on the OEA website was. And I'll tell you what it says, so it's just not, I feel like we have an intent of it. It says, educators, teachers, and other staff have a free speech right to share their opinions and opt out as individuals during non-work hours. Educators can direct students and families to online resources or provide factual information about the law during work hours if asked to do so. School districts can determine educators' speech during work hours to be disruptive to district policy or educational processes. I don't know what that means, but that is on the OEA website under student assessment and opt-out. So,
The OEA website?
What?
The
OEA website, the Oregon Education Association website.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just reading what's there. That was brought up as a point. Yeah.
Okay. Can I be in the queue to comment?
Yeah, Maya, you were done?
Well, I would like to respond to that also, so I can be back with answer.
Okay, Gordon.
I guess, yeah, I mean, I feel like what I'm asking for does go beyond the text that Carrie read, although I mean, and I can say I have had this experience of going to my daughter's teacher and saying, okay, there's a standardized test coming up. Is it testing on things that you've been teaching this year? Do you think it would give you something like useful information about, you know, what my daughter might need or what she's missing or anything like that? Given what you know of her as an individual, do you think it would be anxiety inducing or whatever? And they say, I can't answer those questions. So that's not advocacy in the sense of somebody like, you know, political advocacy or policy advocacy, but it is answering parents' questions about specific tests and about their children in a way that goes beyond, I guess, what is considered the neutral facts of where to find the forms. And I think that that's what we want. And I just 5 minutes ago emailed this language to everyone, including Christine. I don't want to put Christine on the spot, but if she were to look at it and think, oh, there's a problem here, I would be happy to hear about that now.
Thank you, Gordon. I actually have not looked at the language you sent. I wasn't aware that you sent it. My big concern, though, is that there was no proposed policy noticed on the agenda. And normally, when you're going to adopt a policy, there's not one, but 2 reads of it. So there's, in theory, more than they're about a 2.5 week period for members of the public to provide comment, and 2 periods when they can come and make a comment to you. So my concern is really one with process, and my advice is that you should never, unless it's an emergency, adopt a quote policy, because that really is your legislative action. I'm not even sure it would be enforceable and if not void for a lack of notice, frankly. So, but I'm hearing some other creative ways around that tonight, and that certainly could be done.
So, can I just,
I think Myra's in the queue.
can I just respond to this for a second?
Okay.
I guess I would, and I'm not sure the exact thing to do, but I would like to do something that both provisionally makes this our policy as of tonight and says whatever that right date is in 2 weeks, in 4 weeks, we're gonna have this on the agenda and we're gonna vote on it again based, with any modifications and based on the input that we have. So we haven't, so we're guaranteed to be able to hear whatever additional public input or staff advice there may be.
Somebody's been waiting, and yeah.
I appreciate that there's time limits to this, but I also appreciate that the long vision also wants this in place so that in future testing seasons, it's also in place. So I feel a sense of urgency as well as like a desire to make sure it's done properly. So I'm wondering if we can vote tonight in support of the statement after Gordon reads it, and then as a communicated message to our staff, and then do what Gordon suggests of adding it to the agenda on the 18th and then the following meeting to be able to work through this. It's thankfully not like 4-page policy.
So,
I'm
ask a question,
gonna
a clarification.
I
Oh, I'm
think
sorry.
Laura's also been waiting, so. Laura.
I need to, if I can bring. Somebody else can go ahead.
Okay, come back to you. Kirsty.
Yeah, I'm in full support of the sentiment, like, again, this is like the third time tonight we've been asked to just make a decision without all the things in place, and again, full support of if we can listen to some other things, if it's something like that we can communicate out to the teachers and staff immediately, and then consider these other measures as we go down the road, as opposed to having to take a vote on all of this today for these motions. I mean, like, I don't think anyone's in disagreement on the sentiment, but I would prefer to listen to like what can we get out immediately today to convey our sentiments out there, and then go through whatever process to make sure we're not in like in a way to get those policies out there in a way that makes sense for us.
Thank you. Laura's been waiting, so.
Okay, so, thank you. So, I want to be able to do this correctly. I guess I need to know, for sure that, I know we've had other actions that have come up that have passed that immediately. So is it true that it would not be applicable?
Laurel, it's really a matter of a legislative function for you, and I don't think it would be valid for you to pass a policy unless it's in an emergency circumstance without any reading or notice to the public. A motion is different. A motion isn't the law of the land, so to speak, the way a policy is. A policy is intended to be a governing article of the district. And to do that properly, just like when you adopt a city code or a county code, you give notice of what you intend to do, just like we did tonight. In a couple minutes, we'll be doing some policy provisions and proposed policy adoption. And then you give a comment period. This is from the Administrative Procedures Act, and it's how government should work.
So, my proposal is to kick it back to Gordon to be able to work around this, and
that way.
Perfect.
I don't know who was first here, so.
I would like to amend my motion to say that that the superintendent would email this language out to staff tomorrow, and I sent it to you as well. I sent it to all board members and the superintendent and Christine like 10 minutes ago. But I can read it again, but that it not be considered policy until we go through the process that Christine just outlined, starting on the next meeting.
So what your suggestion is, is that we ask the superintendent to email this statement out to staff tomorrow.
Yes.
So I want to check to make sure that it's all legal, and then I want to make sure I find out if what OEA wrote is right, so I need to do some research if I'm gonna put my name on it, so, I don't mind sending something out, but I don't know if it's gonna be exactly what you wrote, because I think what you wrote doesn't match up with what we just read.
OEA is not a governing policy.
No, but I can find who does.
But
I can call ODE.
But how could, you think there's policy that could contradict this?
Well, if OEA is correct, then I wanna make sure that it doesn't, what I'm saying is I don't know that I can use what you wrote. I will send something out that I can verify.
I think, are you saying that you want to see that as legal, that maybe
Yeah.
OEA stated it, so are there any laws prohibiting this or unintended consequences? I mean, I know you look puzzled, I don't know if there's a law or not prohibiting it.
So can you take a look at that and work with leadership, because I think leadership has a passion around getting this out as well.
Can I ask for clarification?
Yes, so thanks.
Gordon, are you asking for this to be communicated to staff on behalf of the board or as a message from staff, or what, is this something that you're asking?
Either way, I'm just trying to get around the policy. I want it to be communicated to all staff and not as policy. It doesn't really matter to me if it comes from the board or the superintendent or the assistant superintendent of instruction. I mean, whatever's.
Gordon, I will do some work in the morning. I have a meeting with a number of very smart women across the state that can help me. And I will call you with whatever I figure out. And then I'll send something out. I don't know if it'll be exactly what you wrote though.
Okay, I'm also fine if you want to work it out with leadership. I don't need to be I suggested it, but I don't have to be the final editor.
I think conceptually, the board is in agreement with the message. We want to just make sure it's legal, number one, not contradicting something or having worked on it, the reason we want to take some time is that there are sometimes unintended consequences, so that sometimes when you open the door to something you believe is right, it opens the door for things that you might not want to communicate. I mean, I want to really think through a policy before we put it out, that it's not going to have consequences that we didn't anticipate.
Okay, so to clarify, my motion would be that excuse me, the superintendent and leadership send out either this or some edited version of this that is, make sure that it's legal, either tomorrow or as soon as practical, that does not have the force of policy, but that's a message. And then we put this as a policy consideration notice for May 18th, and if that takes 2 meetings, that's what I heard you said, that it should be discussed at 1 and voted on the 2nd.
I will not be here on the 18th, but I could put it on for our first read on June 1st. I'm also not sure I'll have time to prepare and look at it. So
it's
It could be on there.
4 sentences, I think.
Well, I haven't read it, and I won't be here to present it.
And is there could you not give comment before? Could you not provide comment on it even if you're not in person? I mean, like email something, write something.
Can we put it on June 1st when she's here and then vote on it at the next meeting? It's still, if we get the idea is getting this message out now while testing is happening, and then the date certain would be June 1st for the first read.
Can this be the first read?
I mean, I just think it's more, there is a force to saying something as policy that's beyond a statement, right? I understand being careful about it, but testing is gonna be over soon. I don't wanna wait until this is only useful for next year to have staff understand that, assuming that we do end up deciding to go in this direction. So, you know, if there's some ways, it is.
But it's setting the
But Gordon,
precedent
even
for
if-
next year, we're building something, so
Yes.
like we've made a statement and they're gonna go out and you're putting that motion out there that we're in support of this. And we're building a free speech, we want this, we're gonna put the social emotional learning, this is like, we are wanting the teachers to be honest and have their opinions out there, and we're setting a motion in place that is going to set a behavior and a pattern for the coming year.
You're right about everything. I still, I mean, it's a 3-sentence thing, and if there's a way to get,
But Gordon, so even if we put it out first read on on May 18th,
yeah,
then the second read is June 1st, and testing's over. So if we even delayed it by 2 weeks, that's what we're saying, that testing will be over by the time we vote on it. I'm sorry, Laura.
Go ahead, Maya.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I would like to second Laurel's question. I'd like to hear, not second the question or motion, but I would like to also hear the answer as to, can this be considered a first read? And again, I want us to be able to balance both the pressingness of the currency of this issue as well as the longevity. So I would like to move in a manner that impacts what is happening now, but also holds the same impact for the future. And that feels like it could be reached with a first read now.
The answer is no. It's pretty clear that this isn't a first read. There's been no notice given, nor is there a policy document in board book for members of the public to comment on. And in concerning the urgency, policy development takes time, and so we need to have things placed on the agenda in advance and sufficient in advance that we can develop it for you. That's all there is to it. We welcome the opportunity, but this is really last minute and was not noticed, and staff are totally unprepared to help you with this tonight.
but we are able to do it if we vote to do it on an emergency basis.
You are able to pass them, to direct the superintendent who's already offered to send out a message conveying this. This is not an emergency.
That's for the board to decide. The board decides what something's an emergency.
But would you do a policy is there a provision to do a policy under emergency? You can take action.
I'm not even prepared for that question tonight, so, I mean.
Can we vote on the first motion to direct the superintendent and then separate these two? Because I think we're gonna get that to happen, okay? Yes, Laura.
So, I feel like what got lost in here, but I did like the suggestion of the button on the front page, large one. So along with the direction of the superintendent, I do feel like, I feel like more information would be helpful for board members around this. So I don't think we're gonna get to a place right now where we can just push this through legally. It just doesn't feel comfortable right now. But I do think we're gonna get to a place where this happens. I just want to do it right, so it's there forever. So, if we could do the direction, ask for information to go out that has to be legal, being somebody who works for government, you know, you have to check these things, else you are liable. So, let's do that. If you could add the button thing, Gordon, so I don't have to have it.
Okay, so to separate things in the way that you suggested, first The first motion is that we ask the superintendent to convey this message, if not exactly in these words, as soon as possible after finalizing language with leadership. And we place the Alicia Hayes honorary button on the front page of the website. I didn't say memorial.
I'm scared to leave.
Okay, sorry, to just be straight about it, we place a easily seeable button on the front page of the website to opt out.
Okay, Maya.
Friendly amendment with links to at least the same languages that Bechtel offers.
Okay, friendly amendment accepted.
Thank you.
Okay. Second. All right, so we have a motion. Does everyone understand the motion?
But did you also say to bring it back for the next?
That they're voting on?
Do we
Okay.
want to
Does
separate
anyone,
that?
I just want to be sure everyone knows what they're voting on. Okay. So any more discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Okay, then all those in favor of that, raise your hand. Okay, the motion passes 7-0 unanimously. Okay. So,
then
Gordon.
second motion, and I just have one clarifying final question for district council. Is it doable to say that we can have public comment on May 18th and then make legal advice on June 1st? In other words, so that would be like a first reading, but if not, I'm just asking. I'm not arguing about this.
Sure. I think I can take a look at it, and it's possible that there may be an absence of legal issues and that someone can present it in my place. So it's possible, and but yeah, I'm not sure though. It depends on where you want to go with the policy and how broad, because it could potentially raise issues.
So I just, what do you think that would be either a risky or sloppy way to do it, and we should just wait till June 1st?
It's probably best.
Okay, that's fine.
But if I see a path forward with, my concern is if there are wonderings or amendments to it, then it seems like because there are speech issues, that is something that I really may need to be here for. If it's a situation where it's pretty narrow and it doesn't look like it's going that way, then you won't need me.
Okay, so my proposal then is that we put this on the agenda for the first reading on June 1st, and then the second reading and vote on whatever's.
June 27th.
Unless the district council tells the superintendent before that she thinks we could move faster.
Do we need to motion on that, or can we just all agree? Is that something we really need?
Thumbs up.
That's a thumbs up.
Okay.
I mean, I think we all,
That's the people saying.
all of us want that to happen. I
But
mean,
thumbs up usually is to just,
okay,
if we're,
okay, we can vote on it, that's
Okay.
fine, make a motion.
that's my motion.
Okay,
Second.
any discussion? So I think the motion is, we will look at a policy on June 1st, and first read, second read the 22nd. And then, if the general counsel finds a faster pathway forward, she'll communicate that to us, right? Okay.
And we can also, we'll have time to discuss whether it needs to be a policy, and that makes sense, right? That will be your first read. Okay, just one.
Okay, any other, that was moved by you and seconded by Laurel, I think, right? Okay, any other discussion on it? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, we have 7 saying votes yes, it passes unanimously. Yes.
Given the time, I'm wondering if there's some changes for items for action for future meetings. Those need, it's almost 10:30.
I'm gonna ask our general counsel about the urgency of the policies. I believe those are what our items for future action are.
They're not real urgent, but they, you know, 2 of them do need to be updated, but they're not super urgent, so we can do it on June 1st if that's.
Or the 18th.
Oh,
yeah.
she's not here.
Yeah, why don't we take some time, because people probably would have read them then, and just see if there's any questions, because this is the first read. I don't know, has everyone had a chance to read them so that we actually would have questions for the council today that she can bring back to us next time? Okay. We'll do this, because I don't see another time. Okay.
So there are 3 policies before you that we are proposing revisions on. Those are policies JBA, Equal Employment Opportunity, IGBB, Talented and Gifted Program, and JFCF, Weapons. And separately, I will also be talking to you about the adoption of a possible new policy, KGBB, Firearms Prohibited. So taking them in order, policy GBA is the district's equal employment opportunity policy. State law changed last year, and now it is recommended that we list gender identity as a protected status in the body of the policy. It was previously subsumed under a definition of sexual orientation that was made obsolete by virtue of legislation. Also, it is necessary to amend this policy to incorporate an expanded definition of race to include physical characteristics historically associated with race. It provides that the policy revision provides that the superintendent would appoint a designee as an equal employment opportunity coordinator, which of course is consistent with our already existing practice. And it clarifies the Title IX coordinator's scope of responsibility. So most of the proposed changes there are simply are necessary to align with updates to civil rights laws, and the implementation of that supports equity within 4J. Are there questions about this particular policy?
I just have one question, I'm sorry, but it said most of these provisions, is there anything that doesn't line up, or they all go for that?
You know, I think just some of it is just some clarity around like the Title IX coordinator.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Policy IGBB, the Talented and Gifted Program policy. So the legislature amended state law relating to the Talented and Gifted Program requirements. And now the district is required to provide that parents have the opportunity to discuss with the district the programs and services available to the student, and to allow them to have input on the programs and services. The policy requires the inclusion of the name of the district coordinator of special education services and the program for talented and gifted students in the district's plan, and that the plan be posted on the district website and in other key locations. There are no questions, I'll move on. Policy J.
Nice.
Go ahead, Laurel.
It says that the name needs to be on it, but it's not on the policy, it just needs to be where? I'm trying to.
The name has to be on the plan. So on the plan itself, so that people can find it.
And this plan is easy to find online?
And the plan will be on the website.
Okay, and it is or it's not?
I don't know. I don't know if it's on the website right now, I apologize.
We just had a lot of frustration around the program, and I just would love, obviously this is about communication about this program, so Has there been, requests for this to go further as part of this policy? And if I go back and look at notes, do I address this to you or to Carrie, or who does it go to? Or the superintendent?
Yeah, you could send it to the superintendent and she can get it to me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that'd be great to see. And then policy JFCJ is the district's weapons in schools policy relating to students. And there haven't been legal changes, but we were taking the opportunity to clean up and just make some changes for clarity in this policy as recommended by OSBA. Policy KGBB is a proposed new policy adoption for you to consider. The district has historically prohibited students and staff members from bringing firearms onto district properties. And, but historically, Oregon law has allowed members of the public to bring, if they have concealed carry licenses, to bring firearms onto district property. Oregon law has now changed so that districts can prohibit even persons with concealed carry licenses from entering district property, provided that the district has a policy on that. So these changes are not required by law, but it's, so the question is really for the board, does it want to have a policy that prohibits concealed carry licensees from carrying firearms on district property? If so, the district has to adopt a policy, and if not, it does not.
Any questions about that one? Laurel?
So you want us to just say yay or nay, or give that to superintendent, or?
If you have a reflection now, that would be helpful. I think, and if you don't, that's fine. We'll bring it forward. It really is a policy. It's entirely an optional policy for the board. I do know there's some history here. The board had a resolution in 2018 really emphasizing its intention to maintain a zero tolerance a zero tolerance policy for the possession of guns on school properties, to the maximum extent possible. But there were legal limitations based on Oregon law at that time to prohibiting concealed carry. That was a different board, and this board may feel differently, or it may feel the same.
Laurel. So, that and the previous, which is, they're both about weapons, right?
Yeah.
I would like to, at some point, see language as including, our restorative justice work or, transformative justice work included in this, to know that I know it's not exactly this, but to refer to those policies. I don't think we're done with them, but I would, because it easily talks about all the really bad things that could happen to students, but I also want to talk about, how we're talking to students when these kinds of scary, unfortunate events are happening. I also absolutely do not think school district property is an appropriate place for weapons. Though I know many believe otherwise, as a soldier, I believe there is a place for weapons, but our schools are not it. And it just allows for scary consequences. Thanks.
Michelle.
From my quick reading, JFCJ it pertains to students, and KGBB pertains to Everybody in.
Members of the public.
Members of the public. Thank you.
Just,
Any other comments?
I was part of the board that was looking at how to limit concealed carry on property, and I'm still believe we should eliminate or not having concealed carry on school property.
Yeah, I was excited we had an option now. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have just a comment.
Great, Maya.
I know it's a requirement by law, but I appreciate the changes to GBA and and to walk us through it. I think that those are important, and I'm glad that we are moving in that direction.
Laura.
As far as, I don't have all the letters in front of me. I would like there to be signage on I would like to add that would include signage to say that, I know we probably have a weapons side or something, but it should probably say including concealed carry permit. So I don't believe in surprising, especially somebody with a weapon. So letting people know our policy up front and center as we change it.
Great. Okay, thank you. I guess we've had a first read. We've all gotten to ask some questions. Thank you. All right, so we have one last thing, and that's items for future agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to bring forward at this time? Not seeing any hands, I am going to adjourn the meeting at 10:34.
Friday is also available.
Okay.